For the most part, I feel like when I'm out there, it's not about survival. I'm just kind of living in the moment, very much in the moment. Versus when you're living at home, you're kind of always living in the future. I'm very bad at being in the moment at home because I
Mm.
always have things to do and things to plan. But yeah, in the moments of survival that I've had a few of those in my life, where it's like I have to fucking figure out what I'm doing right now, or this is gonna be really bad. I yeah, I can tell you that at that time, I feel like you're just so full of adrenaline that there's nothing spiritual about you almost. You're just kind of like very much in your physical body feeling, I have to do something right now.
You're listening to the Art and War podcast with your hosts, Mitch and Nathan. Mitch is a former airborne infantry squad leader who now spends most of his time coaching soccer. Nathan is a professional illustrator and an avid shooter with a couple of years of Canadian military experience. Together, they run the Seaburn art page. Enjoy the show.
Okay, there we go. We're recording. Okay, today we got Tonje Blomseth. I'm sorry. How did you say it in Norwegian?
It's Tonje Blomseth.
Tonje Blomseth. Perfect.
Yeah, it's got a little ring to it.
So you went from Norway and just started homesteading in Alaska.
Yeah, I mean, the plan wasn't to. First of all, it's not really homesteading. It might look that way, but it's off the grid. So there's a difference. We call homesteading, especially in Alaska. That means that you're kind of living completely off the road system. There is a gravel road that leads up to this place, but it's off the grid, meaning there's no electricity out here. So it runs on a solar panel and a generator. And right now, in the middle of October, there's not that much sun to charge up the batteries anymore. So it's basically going to be generator now till like beginning of March.
What were you doing back in Norway before you decided to do this?
Okay, so I, when people ask you, what do you do for a living, right? And then if you have this weird job that doesn't really have a title or you can't educate yourself to have this job, then you don't know what to say. So I always say when people ask that I am a film producer, but to be honest, in Norway, I am sort of Norwegian outdoors profile, where I make a living of producing my own TV shows by doing expeditions and filming them. I don't edit them, but I produce them and film everything on my own. And I've written 2 books about my expeditions. I'm working on my third one right now. And then I do social media stuff. I did a lot of public speaks in Norway, which was a good source of income. Haven't been able to do that since I left for Alaska. So it's yeah, I do a little bit of everything, and I guess you could call it like a outdoors wilderness influencer. I hate the word influencer, but that's pretty much what
We
it
all
is.
do. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know another word for it though, because whenever like I think of what we do now on the show, and I'm like, I guess like you could say like we're an influencer, but like that word is so cringy. Like I hate that word, but I just don't know what other word to use to describe it. Um,
Right.
you were always involved with the outdoors. It sounds like kind of like when you were a kid. Is that stuff that you were doing?
So I grew up with a single mom. She had me when she was 18. So not at first. It was more of just kind of surviving the fact that she had to do many jobs and I was early have to learn how to be independent because she was young and she had to go to school and she had to go to work and to make ends work. And I guess I grew up on the countryside. Then I grew up in the middle of a city and then she married was back then my stepfather, and he kind of threw me into this wilderness lifestyle, Norwegian, very typical Norwegian outdoors life, except he was extremely old school. And he also told me about when he used to run dogs and he had Greenland dogs. And it kind of just tumbled from there for me in my early teenage years. And then I think at some point I outgrew them. I wanted to do more. I wanted to do bigger trips, not just like a week in the mountains going from cabin to cabin, which is pretty normal in Norway. We have like trail systems all over. And that's when I kind of decided that I want to try and make this a living.
That's awesome. So you were doing all of this stuff in Norway, and then what really inspired you to be like, you know what, I'm going to Alaska? Because I imagine leaving family, leaving friends, leaving almost like security, like that feeling of comfort, and then moving to an unknown place. Had you been to Alaska before?
Yeah, so I had done a good amount of expeditions before, and I tried to do one. My first expedition in Alaska was in 2015, and it was just more to get to know Alaska. I went over alone. I will admit I was totally not prepared for being in the wild by myself. Like in 2015, I was, let's see, that's, whoa, wait, how old was I? Probably like 21. And I do feel like I wasn't prepared because I had a moose encounter that screwed up my trip. And then I went back in 2016 to do a winter expedition, and me and a friend, we were gonna try to cross Alaska on skis and have two dogs pull us. So we had like a pulk, like a sled behind us. It wasn't a dog team or
Hmm.
anything. Um, and then I went back. Well, then I went to Canada after that to live a year in the bush with my then boyfriend. And then after that, we broke up, and I decided to move to Alaska for a year, and it turned out to be a bit longer.
And is that still the same trip, that moving to Alaska for a year? Is that what you're on right now?
Yeah, because I was supposed to do some film work here for like I was seeing myself getting done in a year, but it took more than that. So because of COVID, it shut down the native villages, and I was depending on native villages to travel across Alaska to have food supplies for me and the dogs. You know, you just ship it out with mail, and then you know that you have dog food and food for yourself, and whatever gear and equipment you need is waiting for you when you get there. Because you can't get this stuff in the villages. And so yeah, that kind of ruined my initial thought about being done within a year. And now I'm kind of just still working on that film project, but now I also just want to stay forever.
So you mentioned you had a encounter with a moose. I've seen moose a couple times in the wild, and they're fucking terrifying. They are huge. And I know a couple weeks ago you went on a trip and you hunted a moose, but what was that first encounter with a moose that you were mentioning?
Well, we have a lot of moose in Norway as well, you know, but the thing is that right in Alaska they're just bigger, and they can also be way more aggressive. And I ran into a moose cow with a calf, and unfortunately I didn't see it until I stumbled right upon it. I was just kind of doing like a little going away from camp trying to figure out what the trail would look like because there was no trail. So I was just trying to bushwhacking, trying to figure out what's the best route, and I stumbled right upon this moose, and it charged me and the dog, and it kicked the dog, and she ran away in the bushes. And then I pulled up my 44 and took a shot, and not at the moose but up in the air, and that stalled it for a minute, and I ran back to camp, but the freaking moose cow followed me back to camp and tried to charge again in camp, and I shot another shot. And I mean, the whole situation was just terrifying because you can easily get killed by a moose if it hits you, right? And I found the dog a couple hours later, when the moose disappeared. I found the dog, and she was injured. And yeah, that's probably the most terrifying experience I've had in Alaska so far.
Hmm. I can't even imagine because they're, even some of the smaller moose, they are they're terrifying. They're powerful animals, and in the wild, I don't think people really realize, like, an aggressive moose, even like a normal white-tailed deer could fuck somebody up if they really wanted to when they start doing the little stomp with their hooves.
Yeah,
Um,
and do you know that, like, I don't this is very local news, maybe it hit some international news too, but last winter we had abnormal snow amounts in Fairbanks because it usually is cold and dry up here, but it really dumped with snow early on in the season. And what happened is every musher out here that's training dogs on the trails are narrow already, but what happened is that the moose didn't want to go off the trail system because it was easier for them to wander on the trails, and they couldn't go off the trail, and hence they didn't also get enough food, and they were tired, and so they became aggressive. And there was actually a couple dog teams that got charged by moose while training dogs, and one team I think there was several dogs that got stomped on for hours because she couldn't the gun was too little. I think it was something she couldn't get it away, and she had to be, go to the vet and have like multiple surgeries on several dogs. And it's just, we hear about that more and more. I feel like because the weather is changing, there's more snow, and it just changes the behavior of all animals.
Yeah, I mean, especially if there's already trails made, because even humans, if there's a trail, you're more likely to walk on that because it's easier. You're naturally going to drift towards that thing. I imagine that animals are very similar to where, like, why am I going to bushwhack essentially when I can walk on a trail? Um,
Yeah, and that's usually the case. But moose and will run off the trail when they see people because they sense danger with it. But if they don't really want to go off because it's too much snow and it's too much struggle, they're too tired. They will just become aggressive and defend their place, and that's what happened with a lot of people last winter. And I actually ended up, after hearing about these accidents, I decided to run with the 44 myself every training trip I did because I was not about to have the same thing happen to me. And I did run into moose several times, but on a good distance, so they would run off. But I will tell you, it's really hard to control a dog team of big, powerful dogs when you see a moose and they want to go after it, and you have to be on the brake and put the anchors in so they can't move, and at the same time, like, have your gun ready and try to get the moose off the trail. I mean, it's really chaotic and super scary because if at any time that moose charges you, you're like, I don't know, you have maybe a couple seconds, maybe half a minute to deteriorate it, or even have to shoot it to protect your dogs. And I hope I never get in that situation. But I mean, my God, if a moose starts to stomp on dogs, they're pretty much screwed.
yeah, I imagine they do something similar to what, like I was saying earlier, that I've seen whitetail deer do, where they kind of bull you over with their head, and then when you're on the ground, they get back up on their back legs and they just stomp you out with their front hooves. And a moose doing that to a dog, I mean, to a human, it's killing a human. It's definitely killing a dog.
Yeah. I
Ugh.
think they would stomp first before anything else. But I mean, it's kind of a thing where you just, it's a risk you take if you're going to be out mushing narrow trails in the winter. And normally it's not an issue at all. We don't hear much about those accidents. But I feel like if it's going to be uh those kind of winters again, I feel like it's going to be more and more a thing where you encounter moose like that. But now the moose population has dropped because of the last winter. Many of them died out of exhaustion, and I don't know what's going to happen this winter. But I also had several moose encounters on my expeditions where they just, you run past them and you can't tell before you're right next to them, and I'm just like, fucking go, like screaming to the lead dog, there's, just go, don't chase the fucking moose because we're gonna get stomped. And usually they listen if they can hear enough despair in my voice. But my dogs have a really high prey drive, so they really, really want to go and chase this thing thinking they can kill it, and probably would realize way too late that this is not something you go after.
Yeah, and how many dogs do you have?
I have 15 Malamutes,
Oh my
and
lord.
these dogs are, they're pretty wild dogs. They're still pretty close to wolves, I'd say, in the way that they act, in their looks. They have high prey drive, and there's a lot of like pack mentality, picking order, and alpha male and stuff like that. So it's a big breed to work with, considering my size. I'm 115 pounds and 5'2", and some of my dogs are 120 pounds. So it's a big job.
How much food do they eat? It's gotta be a
Oh
lot.
God, they eat so much food. I actually right now have to go and buy the a pallet of like high quality food. And it just, everything is going up in price, and this thing is now, a pallet is $3,200, and it lasts me for 5 months. So I want to say we go through like at least a pound a day per dog. Yeah,
Oh, oh.
yeah, a lot of
Yeah, I
food.
have I have a Dutch Shepherd, and she doesn't eat. She eats like a regular dog, but she's also not out working like that. I imagine they got to be big muscular, like you said. They're closer to wolves. When you went through the training, what's the training like for that? Because I know for you, they do sleds. I've seen your videos where kind of just are loafing around sometimes when they're not out sledding. Um, what was that training like for you as a handler and, just for the dogs as well?
Yeah, in terms of, like, how I train them, you mean?
Yeah, did they come like, did you get them when they were trained? Did you get them when they were puppies and raise them? How
Oh,
did that
oh.
go?
Yeah, so I brought 10 of my dogs over from Norway, and then I had a litter in 2020 that was not planned, but I decided to keep 7 out of 8 of the puppies, and, yeah, I raised most of my dogs from scratch. There's a few that I have adopted from other kennels, but most of my dogs are from puppyhood, so I raised all of them luckily, which has been, I think always that's better when you deal with working breeds because you can control more of their temper than if you just get an adult dog. You know they can have completely ways of being different ways of being raised. But
Right.
my training schedule is usually around August, end of August when it gets cold enough. I start training them on a four wheeler because all of summer they can't train because it's too hot and they have too much fur. They will overheat if I train them in the summer. And yeah, we start by running a few miles in August just to like introduce them back to the harness and get them in shape, and then I just up the miles as they're getting in more and more shape. And by winter, like when the first real sled and snow is on the ground, which is typically like November sometime, they should be in good shape, and then I start adding more weight to the sled. So right now it's like a lot of cardio, getting their heart rate up, and just like a human, you would work on the cardio, and then eventually I'm gonna have to put in the weight because initially pulling a four wheeler that I give them gas for, so that I help them by pulling the gas. They're just not really pulling that hard. Versus when we're going on a sled and there's no trail, deep snow, they really have to get into their harness and pull heavy weight. So it's like a whole training schedule for them, and it's sometimes it annoys me how much they get to work out and I myself don't really get to work out. I just sit on that fucking four wheeler all day and get lazy. But it's fun. It's so much fun, man, to watch your dogs get into shape and listen to you and learning the commands, and I love it. But it's half the day for me where I'm just sitting on that four wheeler right now.
Yeah, my dog, she's a working dog, but she's not like she's not a sled dog. She does bite work, protection work, and I got her. Oh, how old? She was about a year old, but she had went through. I didn't do the training myself because I don't know how to train a dog like that. And when I got her from the trainer, I had the handler course. It was a couple days, and I picked up some things on how to train like your dogs to do new things. Um, and getting them used to everything. Do you use a prong collar, or is it all just voice commands and you expect them to listen?
Um, it's to be honest with you, it's in their heritage to pull. So if I have a dog that doesn't want to pull, I will just usually what I do is I put puppies next to adults that are seasoned sled dogs, and it's in their blood to pull. So it's never been an issue for me to teach a dog how to do their job, and they want to as well. However, sometimes it can be a little bit of a struggle to what do I say? Get them to get along and be comfortable around each other. There's some dogs that won't pull next to
Mm.
another dog because they're scared of it or whatever, and that's like the hierarchy in the pack. But I really don't have any issues going, training them to be sled dogs. It's more so like reading into each dog. Like, is this dog a good sled dog? Will it pull for hours? Will it give everything it has into the harness? While some dogs are like, they're happy doing 2 hours of pulling and they're like, oh yeah, I'd like to sit on the couch now. And that's not going to work on an expedition.
Right, absolutely. Have you ever had one of those dogs kind of like turn on you a little bit, get a little aggressive with you?
Oh no, never. I don't tolerate that shit at all. So the only times I've experienced that is if there is a dog fight, which happens from now and then. It's just the breed. If I know when to put my hands into a fight and not, meaning you don't ever come behind a dog that's fighting and they not alert the dog that you as a human are coming in to drag it away because it can think it's another dog attacking it and
Yeah.
just turn around and bite you, which has happened to
Yep.
me once, and it never happened again. So no dogs ever growl at me or become aggressive at me because that's something I just don't tolerate, and I don't let it happen.
This episode is brought to you by Advanced Warfighting Solutions. Advanced Warfighting Solutions, they have quite literally everything that you need to be a lethal, super cool Instagram operator, and also just a super cool actual operator, or just a super cool civilian, or just whatever the fuck you want. They have battle belts, plate carriers, assault packs, pretty much anything nylon, they got it. So be sure to check them out. Use code ARTMORE10 on an SMU war belt, and you'll save some money. We don't get any kickback, you just save money. Huge thank you to them for supporting the show.
How's it going, lads and ladies? I'm BR, producer of the show, here to take a quick break to tell you about our Patreon. Not only do we want to continue improving the quality of what we can do here on Art and War, but we want to push what we do all over at Seaburn Art, from the guides to pursuing video content and the lofty goal of having a space for our team to make it all happen, and the Patreon helps us get after it. But what's in it for you? Our Patreon subscribers enjoy 5 different tiers of exclusive perks, ranging from all of the content the lads would post on a pre-Zuckerberg Instagram, downloadable high-resolution guides and targets including Redcoats, Skinwalkers, John Harvey Kellogg, World Economic Forum cult leaders, and more. Also, behind-the-scenes info like Nathan's personal art, spicy memes, and at our highest tier, get monthly art commissions created by Nathan himself. You can find our Patreon via the link in this episode's description at patreon.com/SeaburnArt or in the Seaburn Art page's bio on Instagram. Now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, I imagine it's pretty similar where if there's any sign of aggression, like at all towards you or somebody else that you don't want there to be, you have to stomp that shit out immediately. Because if they get in
Oh,
their head that it's okay, then
yeah,
they're
and
out of control.
yeah, exactly. But the thing about Malamutes is that they're extremely people friendly. They're more prone to be aggressive to each other, the same sex typically. But as
Mm.
soon as I see a dog that, let's say I had a dog that would be aggressive to kids or humans, I mean, I wouldn't keep the dog. Like that's just, it's dangerous.
It's very dangerous if you don't know how to handle a dog like that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm.
But
So the dog. Oh, go ahead.
no, I just wanted to say that Malamutes are they're known for being very hard headed and strong, and they're a big dog to handle, but there never really has been any history of human aggression. That means there's something wrong with their breeding line, and I make sure to not breed dogs that are aggressive like that. And I honestly would probably put it down if I had a dog that bit other humans. That wouldn't fly with me.
Yeah, because that's got to be. I don't want to say maybe like a DNA thing. I don't know too much about dogs, but I imagine if there is a dog that has that aggressiveness towards humans and you keep breeding that, it's going to maybe be passed down. Is that type of shit hereditary or is it just behavioral in like individuals?
No, it can be inherited. Sorry, my English sometimes. It can totally be
You're
passed
okay.
down the line. But to give you an example, one of the really big males that I have, he's the alpha male in the dog yard. Everybody's scared the shit out of him because he will fuck them up pretty bad if they try to challenge him. His litter mates, his brother, had to be put down because he apparently bit some kids, and he doesn't have that human aggression, but he definitely has the same, like an insane aggression towards males. Um, but I do think that, like, even though he's my favorite dog in the yard and he's highly intelligent, I would never breed him because I don't want that same sex aggression to be passed down because it's just troubles for me in the future. So I think you just have to be careful about who you choose to breed, and look at their temper almost more than their working attitude, because it's dealing with a bunch of malamutes, 7 or 8 malamutes on a sled, that's pulling a sled, and they're all tangled up fighting. It's a fucking nightmare to get them off each other if you have 8 of them fighting.
Yeah, I can imagine. And like you said, you kind of have to sometimes let it happen for the hierarchy, but not to the point where they're going to kill themselves, I imagine. Um
Yeah, I,
and
I don't usually let it happen. Like when they fight, I break it up instantly. I don't let them fight it off because
oh, okay.
they won't really fight it off. It's like an old myth, I think. I think it's more important to show that I am the leader, I am the boss of the pack, and so they should listen to me when I tell them that this fighting is unnecessary. And I found ways to break it up that makes more sense than to just, old school mushers back in the days would go in with a stick or whip or just like knock loose and get them off each other. And I think that's very outdated nowadays. I would never do that. I think yeah, you gotta be a little bit brutal when you're ripping them apart, but if I go in with a stick and start whacking loose, they're just gonna take that as a sign that I'm in the fight too. So let's go at this one dog and
Mm.
pick at it more because I'm riling them up, you know?
Yeah, so how do you do it then?
Well, it depends on the dogs because some dogs are more intelligent and more emotionally intelligent as well. So some dogs I can talk it out of, like, let's say one of the lead dogs, Paxton, I can talk to him and be like, well, they usually get these few seconds when they're fighting where they pause. They're still on, they're still have a locked jaw on each other, but they pause, and then I can kind of reach through the black curtains, as I call it, and talk to them and be like, "Hey, like, what are we doing? Are we? Is this any? There's any point to this?" And then if the smart dogs will look at me and be like, "No, you're right. This is stupid." Sometimes they will stop because the other dog is submissive and doesn't want to fight back. And sometimes, if it's really bad, I just have to go in there and pick one dog at a time. And my trick is to always have a decent sized stick with me that I could lurk into the dog's mouth because their jaws locked on each other, and you can lurk it into their mouth, and it becomes uncomfortable. They have to open their mouth, and at that point, I just try my best to drag that dog off, hoping that the other dog won't come after it. Um, and yeah, there you go. It's just kind of like it's a circus, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you're out there fucking crushing it. You said you were 5'2", like 115 pounds?
Yeah, I'm tiny. I get a lot of shit for running big dogs like that because it seems very unlikely that somebody small and tiny like me would deal with dogs like that. But I don't really have that much fighting anymore because I train it out of them. But when I do, yeah, it's a fucking shit show. Like I'm having a full blown workout, like CrossFit workout, when they just decide to start go at it. I mean, it's not fun. It's not it's just it's terrifying because they can do quite a bit of damage to each other. But it's the breed. Like, it's just the way it is with these types of dog. I could have gotten Alaskan Huskies, which are way more friendly to each other. They just want to go running, but they also are tiny dogs and they don't have as much fur. And those are the typical dogs you see racing the Iditarod and all those big sled dog races, but they won't make it in 50, 60 below if the wind's howling. Like, they will be freezing.
Yeah, and so you mentioned you brought them from Norway. Did you bring them on, like, did you travel on a boat? Did you bring them all on plane? I imagine traveling with traveling with one dog can be stressful. You were traveling with 8 dogs, you said?
Yeah, I brought 10 over, but you can only bring 4 dogs in the cargo department per plane. So I had some friends fly over a couple dogs for me. So we all flew 4 at a time. And yeah, it worked out. It's fine. Usually you get help from people at the airport and they're in their kennels all the time. But it is stressful to try to run around Seattle airport trying to make the next plane, checking in 4 dogs. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I can.
it's a shit show, but I'm here now, so hopefully I don't have to go move back to Norway with all 15 of them because that would be a nightmare and so expensive.
Do you plan on going back to Norway at all, or are you kind of this is your home now?
I feel like this is my home now, but I am still working on my TV show, and then hopefully I can find a way to stay after that. I really feel like made myself a community here, and I just love the opportunities you have in Alaska. But I do need to go home and see family that I haven't seen for 3 years, and reconnect with some sponsors and maybe do some public speaks and connect with the Norwegian people again because I haven't really been around for any of them for years now.
Yeah, that was one thing I was very curious about because you have all those dogs you have to take care of, and the food isn't cheap, and you have your filming equipment. So I kind of assumed that you were doing maybe like a documentary or something. I was curious on the process of it. Did you have a place already planned out when you were going there, or was it something where you're like, I'm going to go to Alaska, and then you're winging it once you got there? And how are you financially sustaining all of that?
Yeah, I can tell you how that worked out. I came over, like, I didn't have a place to stay when I first moved here because I was basically going to be in the bush for a year doing this expedition. But I quickly realized do need a home base. So I actually came to Alaska, put the dogs at a friend's yard, and then I had to stay in a hotel until I found a place that I could rent. And it was really hard to find a place that would rent me a spot for 10 dogs because no homeowner wants 10 dogs in their yard. But I was lucky to find this one couple that had their house for rent, and they used to have sled dogs, so they already had a dog yard, which was like perfect. And then I guess my financial situation when I first got to Alaska was way better than it is right now because I had a lot of money saved up, and I did really well in Norway. To be honest with you, I made a lot of money, and I want to say I was well off for being a professional dirtbag. But um, ever since I moved here, the finances have just gone down because I'm not legally allowed to work in Alaska. So I respect that, and I can't do that. So I have a business in Norway that I invoice my yearly sponsorships that I've been with for years. And what I do for them is product development, and I'm a full time ambassador, and they pay me like a yearly fee. I have a ski line in Norway. There's a brand that has my name and face on it, and I get like a commission of their sale. And yeah, I just done a little bit of different things to make income without actually taking a job here. And it's been fucking shitty, man. Sometimes I've had so little money that I've just been worried about feeding the dogs even. But it turns out everything works out if you just believe it will. And in 2021 it started going uphill again. Like finally my finances was starting to um yeah, get better, and American brands started noticing me a little bit too. So I could, I just got to deal with Extra Tufts, which was great. And Extra Tufts is huge in the US, and the fact that they wanted to work with me was like, yeah, I don't know how to describe it besides the fact that the work I put into social media finally paid off.
Yeah, social media work it's fucky. I've been around kind of the gun tactical industry social media world since like 2018. I did some work within it. I did some marketing work for a couple companies, a couple social media management stuff, and it's not predictable.
Yeah.
You can't really count on. It's nice when it's working, um, but then sometimes it just goes away for a while, and you're just like, well, kind of need to do something, because money. Everybody needs money to do shit. Why aren't you allowed to work in Alaska? Like, is it because you're not? Are you an American citizen, or is it you still have your Norwegian citizenship?
Oh no, still a Norwegian, 100%. So I'm here on a visa, like a journalist visa. So hence to my filming. And since the project isn't done yet, that's why I'm still here. So I can't legally, because I'm employed in the U in no sorry in Norway for this film job. I can't. Um, you can't just go to US and work. Like there's a lot of paperwork going into that, but yeah, I think social media today, it's crazy because you can make millions of dollars on social media if you really put enough effort into it. But it's funny, like you can have a million followers on TikTok and you can still make $0. So I think
Yeah.
for me, it's not so important to make money off social media, and I say no to a lot of shitty brands that are just it's completely retarded when all these makeup brands and like fashion clothing write to me. They want me to advertise for them on TikTok, and I'm like, have you even looked at my profile? Like, I'm not gonna advertise makeup.
No. It drives me up the fucking wall when companies do that because all they see is your followers, and they don't know. It blows my mind because they have all this fucking money and success, but they don't understand the difference between effective marketing and just like fucking useless marketing. Where it's like they just see your number of followers, or they see how many likes you get, or how many retweets, or whatever the fuck platform you're using. They just see that and they're like, "Oh, let's tap into that." And it's like, this has nothing. My brand isn't that, and it's not going to be effective for you, and I don't like your shit.
Yeah, I think for me, it's also like I said something about this in 2018, and it made the national news in Norway because it stirred so many people. And I still feel this way that the business of outdoors and the sports and outdoors business is constantly moving towards likes and the free advertisement, which means they're high end brands that are high quality and they're pricey. They're sending out their marketing through like cheap influencers who have a lot of followers, but they don't do anything to make the clothing or the gear to give it credibility. Like I've tested this stuff. I stand by this stuff. They just take a picture of it using it, whatever in the backyard or wherever they do it. And I don't understand companies that are high end doing that. Like you don't serve any credibility with your marketing, you know?
Yeah, it's disingenuous, and that's we've turned down a lot of sponsors too, to the point where it started to really negatively affect us. But like we were fine with it because we're like we're not gonna destroy our credibility by just shilling something that we don't believe in. We have a very strict policy when it comes to sponsors, and I think that's the right way to do it. I really like how you're doing that, and I appreciate that you're also doing that, because there's a lot of people who will just see money or they'll see free product and they're like, yeah, I'll do whatever you want, as opposed to running a piece of equipment or having used it before and actually genuinely enjoyed it. There's a lot of disingenuous marketing, and social media is kind of like the Wild West when it comes to, is this like a legit product they're talking about, or is it just something that a company gave them money for or gave them free product to do? Um,
Yeah. And not only that, I feel like because there's so many people that are willing to buy gear nowadays and spend money, I feel like the quality of clothing, especially, is going down. So you can't really find proper clothing nowadays that will handle a couple, at least 5 to 10 years. If you buy something for $600 worth of jacket, like it should last you that long. But you can barely find that nowadays because it's become a fashion thing. Even in the outdoors business, it's become fashion instead of actual quality. It's kind of sad, but I don't. I'm speaking from a. We have a saying in Norway. I'm throwing rocks at the greenhouse because I um I do advertise for brands, so I make money off of people wanting to buy the gear and wanting to buy clothing that I promote. But I do feel like you at least take responsibility by promoting real shit, like proper quality stuff, instead of cheap stuff that are willing to pay you a little bit of money just to advertise. It's not worth it.
yeah, and that's the difference between, I think, marketing and shilling. Um, we see Olight. Have you ever heard of Olight?
No.
No. Okay, so Olight is a really cheap um, Chinese like light company, and they started to get into like tactical lights for like guns and stuff, and you can always tell when somebody, because that's kind of primary our space is like firearms and kind of that community. You can always tell when somebody like isn't genuine with their marketing whenever they promote Olight, because they literally explode. Like if you leave them on for too long, they explode, they start fires. They are a very, very dangerous product. They don't work. Like they're just shitty, but they're a Chinese company that has a lot of money for marketing, and they just send a fuck ton of money to people. Um, so we shit on Olate all the time.
Oh, that's great. I mean,
But
I, I think if you're in a certain community, like if you're in the firearm community, I feel like you kind of know who's legit and who isn't. And I'm not trying to put people down for advertising cheap brands. They can do whatever they want, and sometimes you're in desperate despair of money. But I think it's just, if you're gonna do it for a full-time living, and you're gonna build a career around it on social media, you have to start by thinking, where do I have the most credibility, and what do I see myself doing in 10 years? How to build trust with the followers. And if you every other
exactly.
you have is a fucking advertisement, you're not building any credibility, in my opinion.
No, I completely agree. And once you lose that credibility, like it's gone. Um,
Yeah, that's
because your
that's
followers, they follow you for you. Like I followed you when I first saw you because of you and your personality. I'm like, oh, this is fucking dope. Look at this Norwegian woman in Alaska putting this I forget what we were talking about it before the show, loading this shit up into her truck, and then like I was just scrolling through your videos, and I'm like, she's fucking around with dogs. She's in Alaska. Oh, she's on like a moose hunt right now. Like this is fucking incredible. Like I follow you for you and your personality and what you're doing, and I'm totally cool with seeing advertisements because I look at you and I'm like, this seems like a really trustworthy person. If they're advertising something, then I'm gonna believe in it. But if, for example, you were to start like shilling Olight, I'd be like, oh, so they're just doing it for money, like how I look at other people in the industry whenever I see something like that happening.
Yeah. I really appreciate that you are following me for what I do because my biggest fear through my whole social media life has been having followers based off being a girl, just because I'm a girl doing this kind of stuff. And I get a lot of that from men, believe it or not, when I'm out like drinking and you get a little fired up and people are like, "Oh, you just have followers because you're a chick and you have a pretty face," and I'm like, wrong. Like my most of my followers are women, and I don't show, I don't sit there with a gun in my bikini and whatever, but I really like the fact that you can still earn the respect, because it's so hard for a woman to earn respect in the outdoors community, especially in the hunting community. And I
Yeah.
just feel like I appreciate it when men say to me that you inspired by your videos and not by just looking at you, you know?
Well, I mean, if you had a gun and a bikini in Alaska, you'd be pretty fucking cold.
I mean,
That'd
it's
almost be impressive.
yeah, it just be. I mean, I could never do that. I would. That would mean selling my soul. I couldn't do that. But I think I just see some other friends that also do social media that maybe they struggle with their DMs getting over, blown up with all these men, and I have the opposite. Men come for me for shit. Like they come to me to give me shit and like correct me, instead of like there's no, like, nobody's sliding into my DM trying to hit on me. Everybody's sliding into my DM to correct the way I do things wrong, which I honestly prefer more than having the sleazy dick pics DM.
When years and years ago, when I first started doing stuff on social media, I didn't want to reveal who I was. Similar, I think, to kind of like you, where you want people to follow you for what you're doing. Um, that was kind of my mindset. I was posting like stuff about CBRN protection, chemical, biological, radiation, nuclear, because I didn't see anybody else doing it, and I had some training on it. And people assumed that I was a woman for some reason.
Oh,
For like the first year I was doing it, and I appreciate that time looking back on it more than I did in the moment, because I got a little insight to what it was like being like a woman on social media. I got dick pics, like not
oh,
regularly, but like every so often, and I'm like, why the fuck are you sending me this? And I would laugh. Um,
yeah. You'd laugh in
but
the beginning,
yeah,
and eventually you'd be in despair, I think.
yeah, it's like it got to the point where I'm like, wow, like I have never not hinted that like I was a woman, or like that I was a man. I've never even hinted at my gender, and people kind of just assumed, and then it got around in the community that I was like a woman, and I didn't do anything, and then I fucked with people. After a while, I had my wife like do like a live where it was her voice, to kind of like fuel it, because I thought it was funny, and then I started getting, like I said, like dick pics and like weird messages and people
Uh,
trying to like flirt with me, and I'm like, dude, you need to fucking chill. Like
yeah,
so
it's a thing. I'm glad that you revealed yourself. It can be. I'm glad you had that experience. Honestly, I really don't have much experience with like you said, the men in the DM, but I will say I've heard a lot about it, and yeah, it can be terrifying. It can be quite annoying as well.
yeah, I mean, there are times where even now people send us pictures and it's not like their dick. Now that I say this on the podcast, I'm gonna get a bunch of dick pics. Um, but like in your Instagram DMs, it'll be like the image is blurry and it's like tap to reveal the image. But for whatever reason, whenever I do that, it like remains blurry, so I have to accept the message and look at it. And I
Oh,
still have like this fucking like trauma. I'm like, fuck, is this gonna be like an like another dick?
yeah.
And I was telling my friends about it, that were kind of in the thing, and they started sending me. Do you know who Dick Cheney is, former vice president of the United States?
No, I don't.
Oh, I mean, he shot somebody in the face while he was vice president with a shotgun on a hunting trip.
Oh,
Anyways,
oh
his
yeah,
name,
yeah. I heard about that.
yeah, that guy. So people now they'll send dick pics, but it's just Dick Cheney. So it
Wow.
makes me laugh.
It's just the time people have to go around doing that stuff just baffles me. Like, can you imagine if people put that amount of time they spend on social media looking at other people, how much they put out on themselves, how much they could accomplish? It makes me kind of sad and feel empathy for them, honestly, because in the end of the day, it's like there's so much you could do with your life. If social media didn't exist, there's so much more we could do with our lives. I truly believe, especially for people that don't know how to like the balance of it, it can be really toxic for a lot of people. And I think you have to have a balance, especially if you do it for a living. You go in, you post, you do your thing, and then you log off.
So you're a post and ghost type of person.
What is that you said?
Post and ghost, so like you post and then you just log out.
Mm, yeah, I got a call a couple years ago from some friends, like girlfriends. They're like, why? They really asked me like, why don't you like the posts? And I'm like, it's not that I don't need to like your posts to know that I love you. Like I call you twice a week, so I get everything I need to know through the phone call. I don't wish to sit on Instagram and scroll through other people's lives. It doesn't interest me. If I need to know something, I will call them. Um, I'm not a texter either. I call. So I feel like, yeah, maybe I'm a post ghoster. I post and then I am really bad at answering comments as well, and I should be better at it to connect with people. But it's just like I don't want to spend hours on social media, and TikTok is already screwing enough with me because there's the algorithm is so good that you just get to see everything that you want to see. Um, and honestly, TikTok you can learn everything you want ever wanted to know. I feel like I feel like TikTok is more toxic or more what do you call it? When you get addicted to that more than Instagram. But yeah, I'm really bad
Yeah,
at spending time on social media, really.
yeah, that dopamine that you get from scrolling on TikTok. They really figured it out. Instagram is trying to kind of follow suit with Reels, but the way that TikTok works, I'm so glad that you're like a social media person in the sense of like marketing and stuff too, because I look into this shit a lot. Um, the way that they do it is so smart. It's instant dopamine. Like every swipe you get, it's going to be something that you like after you've done it for a while, because they analyze how much of a video did they watch. Did they just scroll right past it? We'll stop showing less of that. Oh, they watched like a whole minute and a half of this. Oh, we're going to show more of this. And it's really fucking smart, and it gets you just scrolling for hours.
Yeah,
It's
it, it,
something.
it's honestly it's I think it's unhealthy. If you can control it by using it for either entertainment like an hour a day, or you can do it for learning purposes because you can look up literally everything on TikTok, right? I think that's a good thing, but I think as soon as you're passing 2 hours a day just scrolling, that's when I think you're fucking with your brain chemicals, basically.
Yeah. Do you feel any? I don't mean this in an accusing way, because in a way I'm asking myself this question. Do you feel guilt at all for kind of contributing to that world where people might stop and look at your shit for an hour and a half, even though it directly kind of it, it's weird because I don't know if I necessarily feel guilty about it, but thinking about it, like I'm contributing to the problem with my content.
I honestly never thought about that before, and I don't think I feel guilty. If anything, I want to educate people and inspire people, and especially women, to get out and be and do their own thing and be independent and explore more. I could definitely make more social media content about the positive effect of being outside and what it does to a person. But so far I haven't. And I also am passionate about educating people about dogs and training and this lifestyle because I think a lot of people could benefit from it. But no, I don't really feel bad about it. If I feel like what I do has a purpose, and maybe it's not nailed out, carved out well enough yet to have like an educational purpose to it. But my dream would be to take people up here and teach them how to be outside, even if it's just for 2 days, and see how happy you can be when you quit having a screen in front of you, when you master little tasks. And I've seen it firsthand because I have workaways here, I have volunteers here all summer, and most of the year I have volunteers come in here to help me train the dogs. And I mean, I teach them how to use the chainsaw. They chop wood for the first time in their life. They're running dogs. They're figuring out these big dogs, and they come in every night at dinner and talk to me like, "I did this today. I managed to do this. I finished a project. I'm so proud of myself." And I just feel like that's what I want to give to people through social media.
It's very freeing when you're able to go out and do shit like that. Like people sleep on physical labor now. I think because everything is moving, the world is kind of moving to be more digital. Um, work from home, work remotely, which I think is a good thing, where people don't have to travel to an office. But there is something to be said where just simple interactions with people and getting up and doing something, working remotely makes it so a lot of people could just sit at home all day and be lazy fucks and get fat. Um, but it's a complicated it's a complicated situation. Um, but what
Yeah,
you're doing, I think, is very unique in the sense where you're not. I mean, your stuff is very entertaining, but it's not. You're not just up living in Alaska for people's entertainment. You're up there for a purpose, and you thoroughly enjoy it. Like that is your life. You're not faking that. Um, so
no.
it makes it easier to be more genuine on social media for you, and I think that makes it a more overall pleasant experience, not just for yourself using social media, but for other people that watch your stuff. It's very genuine.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I always want to come off as genuine and show the ups and the downs. I think it's important. And yeah, like I said, I like to inspire people to just try and at least live out a part of their dream if they have one. Because I was lucky to start living out my dream when I was 17. I decided early to do so, and I know that a lot of people aren't privileged enough to do that or have the know what they want to do when they're 17. So I was pretty lucky, and I'd love to see more people break out and find a way to do what they love, even if it's nature or not nature. I don't care, as long as they do something they like. And I hope I can contribute with that.
So you mentioned one of the things that you really want to do is inspire more women to get out and do what you do. I think that's one of the things that kind of makes you unique and kind of what stuck out to me. Like I said, that first video that I saw of you was on TikTok, and I'm like, as I scrolled through, I was like, holy shit, this tiny Norwegian woman is out there fucking crushing it. Like, because you don't see that a lot, and I'm sure there are other people that are doing it. You're not the only woman that's up there fucking crushing it, but you do represent a really, I don't want to say niche because there are other people that are out making content like you are, but you're doing it as a tiny little Norwegian woman out there fucking crushing it. I think that is just it's so unique. I watch the Bearded Woodsman or the Wooded Beardsman. I always get it messed up. He's got a beard. He's in Canada. Um, cool guy. And there's people out there who I think are genuine out in the woods filming, expeditions, or they're just filming themselves and their lives. And your stuff isn't just dog stuff or that video of you hunting a moose. It's also you just fucking drinking and bullshitting, which is
Which you
I,
have
I
to do
think the
to
people appreciate it.
survive.
I definitely appreciate it. I'm like, oh, this is a person that's up there, and they're not just fucking slaving away all day. You know, they have a life. They have a social life. They're out there like it's real life. I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of people that live in the woods and are completely bush people. I never wanted to be 100% time, like all my time in the bush, because I do need the social aspect of it. I do need a community. I need friends. I need to have validation from my friends sometimes that I am a good person, and not just tell myself that when I'm out for months alone. Um, but what I think is, if I was to give myself one tap on the shoulder, and I become extremely humble over the years because I've fallen into spirituality more and more, is that I found that there's one thing that separates me from the majority, and that is that there isn't many people nowadays that wants to do, or can do, I guess I should say, because of work, long expeditions. I find that there's a lot of people doing what I do in Alaska, living off grid, maybe not to the extent of homesteading, because that's a different thing, right? But I do find it that people there isn't a lot of people that are comfortable going out for 3 months or 5 months alone and just be out there, even if they have a purpose of moving from A to B, cross Alaska, cross Mongolia, whatever the trip is. There isn't a lot of people. Those old time explorers are kind of a dying race, I find. And I think because I'm young and I'm a female, that's what makes the brand interested in me and why I have a TV show. But in terms of the daily living, you'd see that in Alaska, a lot of people cut firewood, a lot of people Not a lot of people live off the grid, but there's plenty of people that do, and there's very few people that live homesteading, without a road system. But I think it's not necessarily the daily lifestyle that makes me different. It's more that when I have free time, I decide to go alone and disappear for a couple months.
You mentioned you've connected spiritually, and you go out in the woods. I kind of grew up in the woods, not to the extent that you're doing right now, but I do know that I feel a certain inner peace with myself when I am just out in the woods on a hunting trip, just by myself, just in nature. There's a strong connection with nature. I haven't been out alone for months though. I imagine you have to find a way to connect with everything, and I can't picture going out there and not connecting with everything if you're out there for, you know, on your own for a couple months. Can you tell me a little bit about that spiritual connection that you mentioned?
Well, it happened for me 2 years ago, and I mean, this is very alternative because it's kind of new age thing, I think. But I have never been a person who believes in religion. Like, I never believed in a god or anything, and I still to this day I'm not religious. But what happened to me was I was just kind of catalyzed into this spirituality because I spent so much time alone when I first moved to Alaska because I didn't know anyone. Um, and I spent more and more time alone and more time in nature. And what happened to me was basically I I started feeling more connected with not just myself but everything that is, like every being. And when you spend months alone, eventually you can connect with the animals as well in a way that you can tell when birds are coming in. You can sense on the weather where the animal's going to be. And also, this is going to sound really weird, but kind of a connected to energy. I would have, well, I'm just going to say it
That
right out.
doesn't sound weird at all.
I would just start seeing things and hearing things. And this isn't because I'm going into a crazy person who spent too much time alone. This is because your mind is still. You're not talking to anyone besides the dogs and yourself. And there's no influence from elsewhere but nature and the dogs and yourself. And soon enough, when you are still for long enough, you start to pick up on things that you normally in a daily busy life won't pick up on because your mind is constantly wondering, I gotta do this, I gotta feed the dogs, I gotta go to the grocery store, blah 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 blah. And when you're out on expedition and anything that the only thing that you observe is the butts of your dogs and nature and the weather, I feel like you open up energetically to something else. And that's what I experienced by actually seeing things and hearing things that I've never experienced before.
No, I don't think that's weird at all. I did a cold weather survival course in Estonia where you were essentially alone and you had somebody would come out to your location just to make sure that you hadn't died. But part of what the instructors said, they're like, if you spend a significant time out alone here, the combination of the elements and you being alone in your head, you're gonna start feeling differently and looking at things differently. Like you said, I think people might look at that like, oh, you're just a crazy person. I don't think that's the case. I think that's just when you're alone in harsh conditions where you have to survive and all of that normal shit goes out the window.
You're just left with you're just left with the core of your being and your soul. And I feel like that's something we in this modern society with all this technology, we don't have time for that. We don't have the stillness around us to be able to connect with that. And like I said, I used to be a non-believer of none of this. I thought it was when you listen to those spiritual people talk, I used to think that they're crazy. But now I understand that it's more reality than anything else. It's just that we don't have time for it. We don't put time into it.
Yeah, I've never done psychedelics. I don't know if you have, but from what I hear, a lot more people are getting into them nowadays because it gives them that release where they get to look at themselves in a different perspective and they get to remove kind of that outside world for a couple moments where they can really evaluate who they are as a person and what they're doing. And I imagine it might be a little similar to that. I don't know. I haven't done them. Have you done psychedelics or anything by chance? I sound like
Um,
Joe Rogan. Have you done DMT?
have you gone into the different dimension? Yes, I have done psychedelics, and I've tried it a few times, and I always done them alone, and I've done it with close friends. For me, I don't. So this is where it gets weird, though. I didn't, and it kind of opened up a new dimension for me of, like you said, how you think about yourself. But it and now I've gotten to the point that I don't need to do that in order to enter that realm, if you know what I'm saying, because that's what they
Hmm.
say when you do psychedelics. You kind of open up your brain for to enter a different spirituality realm, and I can enter that now without the psychedelics, and it's taking me a lot of training to get there and a lot of alone time to get there. But this, I want to tell a story about this spring, and I haven't yet told much people about this because it's so personal and it's really profound for me. But this spring, when I spent almost 3 months alone up on the North Slope of Alaska, I I um I was meditating, just like thinking, okay, I need to put some energy into my body. I'm feeling really low today. So I decided to meditate. And I was just thrown into this crazy traumatic event that happened when I was a young kid. And I re-experienced everything. And I was like sober, I was just meditating. And I re-experienced everything. I could see the people's perspective, everyone that was involved. I could see myself from an outside perspective as a young girl. And I also, voices talking to me, telling me like I need to forgive in order to move on. And it just like, I woke up from the meditation, like bawling my eyes out crying, because it was just so profound that I am at 28 years old, have never ever thought about the fact that I'm still carrying this with me. And I just like put it in the back of my head, and I just like I saw the whole picture. Then next month I saw the whole picture about why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I'm comfortable being alone, why I need so much time to be alone, and why I don't really need people, to feel validated and happy, and maybe why I have trust issues, blah blah blah. And it just like dissected my whole life, through one meditation session. And I spent a lot of time the next month just, working through the trauma, and came out of the mountains like a completely different person. And I think anyone can access that if they just truly put time and effort into it. You're not going to have your first meditation session and then like hit rock bottom and just see everything. That it takes time to like actually be in that stillness, calm of mind. And I wasn't even prepared to what met me when I meditated. It just happened to me, and I was like, holy shit, I can do this. I can tap into whatever I want if I just calm my mind enough. And I have ever since. When I came home from this trip, I have meditated and experienced so much more, and realized so much more after that. I feel like I want everybody to experience that without psychedelics. I think you can do that too, but I think psychedelics is a good way to initiate it.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, it was a lot of crying in April. Being out there alone, it was a lot of crying, but it was good. It was like a good thing, because I think a lot of people suppress their traumas, or and things that happen to them, and it can be a small thing, it can be a big thing. But I feel like, I wish everyone I knew, would do it. And I feel like psychedelics should be like almost a law that everybody have to do it once in their life, just to take a good look at themselves. And what happens on psychedelics is you can't lie to yourself. There's no possible way to lie to yourself, or deny anything. Everything is just there, and you just gotta take it and deal with it, whatever it shows you.
That's what everybody tells me, where it's like you can't, there's no hiding from yourself anymore. And I think to a certain extent, at one point in all of our lives, we all hide from certain things that we do. Bad habits maybe, or just how you look at yourself. And so I was in the military. I'm retired now. I'm actually able to do these things. I've been considering trying psychedelics, because everybody that I talk to that has some type of trauma, especially in the military, I was talking with this guy Fred, had him on the show a couple times, Counting Coup, where he went and did psychedelics, and it's completely changed him. It allowed him to be a more loving father. But it scares the shit out of me thinking like, man, like, I'm gonna get a top-down look at me and everything that I consider, like, a failure about myself, like, kind of the shit that I, like, ignore, going through life. Like,
Mhm.
that scares the shit out of me to have to confront that, but I think it's kinda necessary in order for you to grow as a human. Um,
But why does it scare the shit out of you?
you know, because I think there's some things innately about myself that I don't like, or things, like, involving my past where I'm like, like, I think back. There was a profound moment in my life where I decided I'm actually going to try and be a better person. I used to be a fucking piece of shit. I don't hide from that. Growing up, I was manipulative. I was very narcissistic. I had to control, or I had to at least feel like I was controlling people around me to benefit my life until I was maybe like 2021. Um, and then there was a moment where I witnessed like actual tragedy that somebody experienced from that behavior. And I like snapped out of it for like a couple seconds and I'm like, what the fuck? And I just like real quickly over the span of a couple seconds, like everything that I have done to be like a terrible person growing up just like flashed before my eyes. And I'm like, I felt like a piece of shit because I was. And I was like, I need to actively try and not be like that. And it took time. It sounds like, oh, well, like poor you, it took time to not be an asshole.
But no, no, I think that's the wrong way to think about it because in everybody's a product of their childhood. I truly believe that, and I think what psychedelics would do for you is that it would probably give you a good look at why you had the need to be that way, and it will probably be pretty painful to see the reasoning why you had to be like that. It could be an influence in your life as a kid, it could be something that happened or shaped your personality as a kid or beliefs you had as a kid, and it's really good to take a good look at that because then you can kind of get at peace with it and move on from it. But when you don't know why you're acting a certain way or why you used to act a certain way, it's way more hard to move on from it, I believe.
Yeah, and exactly what you said. That's kind of why I've really been considering it more. I definitely, I mean, I think I'm a very changed person, a changed man.
Yeah.
But I do think there are some things where I look back and I'm like I still fucking cringe at myself. I'm like, why the fuck were you like that? Like, why were you doing that? And I have considered. I talk with the producer of the show. He does psychedelic. He tries to convince me every so often. But there's more and more people who essentially they say the same shit. They're like, there's no hiding from yourself, and it makes you face those realities about yourself. And I think that's something that I have avoided because it's easy to avoid. And I'm doing this new thing. It's not new. Over the last couple of years, I'm trying to do the harder option because I know it's better for me when it comes to anything. Could be trauma, could just be life. Like, hey, is it easier to take, kind of like we were talking about earlier, is it easier to take the path that's smooth, that already exists, or is it more difficult to go and make your own path and bushwhack through the woods? Um, and I'm trying to do the more difficult one while I still am physically able to until I'm old and decrepit and can't. Um, so that's trying to, I'm trying to go through life like that and build that resilience and try to take that more difficult path more often than not. And I think the difficult path for me now is facing that shit. And I think psychedelics might help with that.
I think it most definitely would. I think, like I said, I think everybody could benefit from it, and I'm a little bit wary about talking about psychedelics because it's highly illegal in Norway. And I could probably get into a lot of shit for telling, from a public podcast that I've done them, but I don't care because the health benefits of it, the mental benefits of it is so profound, and I truly believe if you try it in a safe environment. And I honestly would tell you to try it alone because it gives you way more perspective than if you are with somebody else because you're constantly worried about how the other person if they're aligned with you. Yeah, so I would say do it alone or somewhere you can be comfortable and you're not going to run into any people, and just let it be whatever happened. And if for some people it involves a lot of crying or anger or whatever it is, but it's it's worth it. It's totally worth it. I think it changes people. And if you look at the studies, it's going to become a thing in the medical world pretty soon, I think. In several countries, it's becoming a thing.
Yeah, I know with a lot of that's what I was telling you about earlier. He's a 20-year special operations veteran, and he used it to get over some trauma, and it sounded like it worked really well for him. We talked about it where he's just a his ego was blocking him from fully expressing like his love, um, and it was a very profound conversation, and it sounded like a very profound moment for him. But I do think that it's something that I need to just shut the fuck up and swallow my pride and do it.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing though. Like the ego gets in the way for everybody, in every day of the life. You know why am I not doing as well as this person, or why is this person getting this and I'm not getting this, or why do I feel this anger? And I think unless you understand the reasoning why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and you can recognize your own thoughts and feelings when they're happening and observe them, and it takes time to get to that point where you're just like, I talk to myself a lot, when I'm just like annoyed. I'm annoyed with the dogs or anything. I just talk to myself and I'm like, okay, I recognize that I'm annoyed with the dogs. They're not behaving, but I'm not going to let this be me. I'm not going to be angry because I'm feeling angry. I can feel the anger. I can observe the anger, but I'm not going to be angry. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference through that. And the
Hmm.
only way I've gotten to that point and not let everything influenced me so much, because my god, when you're out on an expedition or when you're out here in a daily life, shit happens. And before, I would spend so much energy being upset, like, why is this happening to me, why are things not going this way? And I would become the emotion. I would become that person that feels this emotion. But now I more observe the emotion. And the only way to get there is knowing why I have the tendency to be angry about it. Why do I have the tendency to be really happy about something or really sad about something? I know myself so well because I looked at all the reasoning behind it. And I feel like that would really benefit you too, because then you can move on and know that when your behavioral pattern, whatever it is, pops up again, because it always will. Nobody is zen all the time. Um, then you can just be like, oh, here is that feeling again of something I used to feel a lot. Then you can just observe it and be like, okay, letting it go. It can be there, but I'm not going to let it be me.
Mm. The more people I talk to, the more I get convinced that I just have to do it. Um,
Yeah,
so you mentioned so you're sorry, I need to gather my thoughts a second.
it's a heavy conversation for sure.
No, it is, and that's one of the other things I'm trying to actively get better about. So I'm going to reflect even more. One of the things that I realized that I used to do, I think a lot of people fall into this trap where they don't take time to think; they just speak, and not everybody probably lies when they do that. I'm not saying that's a problem, but I would look back on conversations that I had when I was like in high school, and I'm like, you would just like you being me, I'd be like, I would just say shit because I didn't want to take the time to think because I thought I would look stupid, and inevitably it led to me just like telling little lies about shit that didn't even matter. So I try and not that I was about to lie to you about anything, but I try I try now. I'm in a good habit where sometimes I just sit and I gather my thoughts and I have to think about something.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you and I were the same at some point. I would also speak my mind without thinking, brutally honest. I didn't have any problems saying mean things to people if I felt like they deserved it or if I was done wrong. And I had quite the sharp tongue, as we say in Norway as well. And it could be pretty hurtful things. And I usually knew what to say to people to really, really get to them. And that to me today also, it just disgusts me when I think about some of the stuff that I've said or done to people out of anger, and thinking about it, like, where the fuck did that anger come from? And now I know all of it. I know all of my behavioral patterns, why it was so easy to be that shuffle off person and just be like, go fuck yourself. But I don't feel like that's me today, and I regret some things that I've said. And the first thing I did when I came out of the the north this spring or winter, I called a bunch of people and I was like, "Hey, I know this is a while ago, but I feel like I need to say sorry about I realized I behaved this and this way." And they're like, "You don't need to apologize. This is a long time ago." But I'm like, "Yeah, but I do." It's like a coming out of a AA kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did the same shit a couple years ago where I like, hey, this time in middle school, like I was a real fucking dickhead and I'm sorry. And they're like, what? I don't even remember that. And I'm like, well, I'm glad that you don't remember it, but I remember it very profoundly. And I cringe very hard at myself for being that much of a dickhead. Um,
Yep.
yeah.
It's a good
No,
way to move on.
yeah, it's good to give yourself some closure like that. I think it's innately a little selfish, but I'm okay with being a little selfish sometimes.
Yeah, it is selfish in a way, but if it helps you move on and feel like you're on the right way to become a better person, then why not? And I know that like that's why I feel like spirituality and honestly psychedelics and nature it just it all goes hand in hand. Like I wish there were more people could find like the stillness that I feel like I have so much stillness to the point where it's a little too much. Just yesterday I called my friends and said I'm ready to get out of this place and be social, and I need you guys to help me and drag me out and be social. um, but I just feel like it's few way too few people have the means and the time to go and really take a good look at themselves, and I wish that more people could.
Yeah, and that's what intrigues me a lot about, your situation and kind of mine now, I guess. I'm back towards the woods. Um, that was kind of my escape is the woods. It sounds like for you, you're able to. I mean, it's your life, so you're definitely able to. Where you go on these expeditions, or you just go alone in the woods or the mountains, or whatever the situation is in Alaska, and you can just be with yourself, um, and experiencing. It's like experiencing yourself. It's very weird. I haven't done it, like I said, as long as you have, but there comes a point where if you're alone for a certain amount of time, you almost start to just really experience who you are, like as a person. And I talk to myself too whenever I'm out in the woods. Sometimes I'm like, fuck, like any little problem comes up. It rained and now firewood is wet, or you're struggling to. I always struggle to start a fire when I was in Colorado. The elevation is fucking brutal. And it drove me up the wall. Like even just like camping with my wife, I would get fucking frustrated because I have a lot of pride. I'm like, yeah, I can start a fire. Like I know how to start a fire. I've been hunting, I've been camping. I know how to start a fire. And then I went up into the elevation in the Colorado mountains, and I'm like, why the fuck is it so difficult to start a fire? It's because there's so little oxygen up there, and it makes
Yeah.
it more difficult to burn. But yeah, you get to really experience yourself and how you are as an individual, and there's no manipulation and there's no lying about you, because if you do, you're gonna get hurt or dead. Um, you can't lie to nature. You have to be very honest with it, and you have to be very honest about yourself if you're gonna make it out of there. And I imagine the situations that you go to, that's something that you have to experience.
Yeah, and I also think nature has a way to humble you. If you do become overconfident, it has a way to throw it at you and be like, "Listen, like you are a nothing, and we're gonna prove it to you that if you don't humble down, then we're not gonna let things be easy anymore." And I truly believe that the energy that you put out and the thoughts you put out is what you reflect and get back. So I try to remind myself of that almost daily, when I'm feeling like a pissy and a shitty mood because everything's going wrong. The fucking generator won't start and I gotta fix it, and whatever happens usually happens all in a day. And then I just remind myself, well, I kind of asked for it. I probably asked for it by thinking and feeling negative thoughts and being just in a certain frequency, a certain way of human being acting. And I usually try to think to myself, I put this on myself, and when I feel good and happy and everything is then things have a tendency to just run more smoothly. And even if shit does go wrong, I'm more like, ah, it's not a big deal. Like I can fix it. Oh, a snowstorm, it's not a big deal. Like it's just buckle up in the tent and fire up the wood stove. And instead of like being so egocentric about everything, that everything's happening to me, everything is wrong for me, it's not fair, then that's when I feel like everything just gonna like a snowball running down the hill, it's just going to get worse.
Yeah, a very important lesson that I learned from my good buddy Jorge. We both coach soccer now. That's my big thing. I coach soccer.
Like European
It's
soccer?
yeah, yeah. I
Oh,
played over in Italy for a little bit, and I'm trying to change. I have a daughter, so I've kind of I'm retired now. I get a pension. I'm very fortunate to be in that position. My wife is about to start becoming a teacher, so we're gonna be pretty taken care of and well off to where I can focus and dedicate my time to making women's soccer in America better for my daughter. Um,
I love
so
this.
that's kind of
This is real football.
real football, absolutely. I played a little bit in I'm saying played in air quotes. I was a redshirt goalkeeper in a very, very low Italian division, and I never ended up playing because I was a redshirt keeper. I would just I learned from the coaches though over there, and that was my big break where I'm like, I want to do this. So I started coaching, I started scouting, and yeah, here I am now. But the point that I was getting at, I was talking with him the other day, and he was working with one of the female clubs out there. And one of the thing he noticed was, I think it was the defender made a mistake, and then she didn't recognize it immediately, and like just kind of like forgave herself. She let it bother her, and then more mistakes happened. And he taught me about compounding mistakes and how that affects your mentality. And it sounds something simple where it's like, oh yeah, like I know that. Like you don't want mistakes to build up. You don't want to let those things pile up and drag you down. And it sounds like common sense, but the way that he explained it, he's like, yeah, you just need to acknowledge if something goes wrong, like she missed a tackle. Hey, my bad, move on. And then that way it's still fresh and clean. And I think that's a very good way to go through life. And I'm very appreciative of him kind of making something that seemed really obvious more of a reality for me. So now that's something that I'm trying to teach my players whenever I see something. I'm like, hey, don't let it compound, recognize it, move on, and trying to apply that to my life. And that's what it made me think about.
But isn't it funny how we're so good at teaching other people life advice and like telling them how to think and but we're really bad at applying it to ourselves sometimes. Like in anything in life, I feel like it's I'm really good at giving advice to people, but I sometimes have really trouble following the same advice myself. But it is good practice if you become aware of the feelings that you're experiencing, then it's more easy to apply those things to yourself.
Yeah. Well, teaching people is something to me, something that I recognize I'm good at. I'm a good coach. I am a very good football coach. If we're gonna I forgot you're European, so I can say football, and people don't think I'm talking about the NFL. Um, I'm a very good football coach. That is one of the things that I recognize I am good with. But like you said, when it comes to applying things to myself, I have to try a lot harder. I have to really think about applying, like you said, those compounding errors that he taught me. I have to really think about that and apply that over things in my life for like a couple weeks before it kind of becomes natural to me. Um, I
Yeah.
do think that's funny. Are you a fan of football?
Used to be my email address when I was a teenager was Tonje underscore Manchester underscore United. So I used to be. Now
Oh, you're a United fan.
I was. I'm not now. I don't honestly give. I don't watch sports anymore. I'm too busy with having my own sports league around here. I do appreciate sports. Though. I used to be playing handball, and I wanted to be a professional handball player. And I screwed my back up, and then I decided to do outdoors full time instead. Um,
Hmm.
but I think. Oh, I totally crossed my. The dogs are howling outside. Actually, I need to go check on them. That's why I was distracted. Can you give me a sec?
Yeah, yeah. I'll pause. I'll pause. Not a problem.
No, I think this is an interesting subject that it's hard to talk about people with this kind of stuff because it's very deep. It can be hard for people to talk about it. I do think that is something I would like to talk more about, but I don't know how to do it in social media because I don't want to be labeled as whack. If I was to tell the online world how much I've experienced and what I've seen and what I believe in now, I feel like that I would just immediately be. People would just say that you spend too much time alone and you're going crazy.
Well, you don't got to worry about that here because I went from being, an airborne infantryman in the military whose job was literally violence to becoming a full blown pacifist. And people people look at me when I tell them that, and they're like, "You're a fucking weirdo." So you don't got to feel like a weirdo here. I promise.
No, it
I think people appreciate the honesty.
Yeah, I think I feel like I'd like to talk more about it too, and I tell my friends a little bit, some of it what I experienced, but it is hard sometimes because you don't always believe all the things that you experience because it's so out there. Like I've seen shadows and I've seen how can I explain? I've seen like different forms of light, and I've heard a lot of things coming through me as messages, and I'm just like, the more it happens, the more I have to believe in it. But it's something that it's you can't really explain it with science, and that makes it hard to talk about it because it's very new age, right? But I feel like the more time you spend alone, and especially in nature, there's a channel opening for you to experience these things if you just let it. And sometimes it happens without you even letting it. It just like comes crashing into your life, like it did with me.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy. I think it certainly can be. Like people can latch on to that, and let's say somebody enters, they put themselves in your shoes, except they're a very uh, I don't want to sound like I'm talking poorly about individuals. I'm thinking of vulnerable, very vulnerable people in a way that is because we're all vulnerable, but I'm thinking I don't want to sound offensive. I'm thinking religions, and how
Yep.
religions can provide a lot of clarity for a lot of people, but religion can also be used to take advantage of people. Um, and I
Yeah,
think in a
it's a
way,
minefield as well.
yes. And I think in a way where if you're in a situation where you have to be alone with yourself, you can almost take advantage of yourself in a way if you aren't too careful. I don't think that makes anybody crazy. I think if, maybe if you were being like, "Hey, I've seen God out there. I am talking to God. God is speaking through me. I am like the second coming of Jesus." And I'd be like, "Yeah, you're probably going a little crazy from being alone for too long." But s- simply, you know, what you're experiencing doesn't sound crazy to me at all. It just sounds like you're in nature and shit happens in nature. And like I said, even the instructors that I was talking to in Estonia, they were like, "Yeah, I mean, we go out sometimes for a month or two at a time, and yeah, I mean, your mind, maybe it's your mind playing tricks on you, maybe it's nature trying to communicate with you, maybe it's a combination of both. But things get weird, and it's okay." Um,
Yeah, it's I've just decided that I'm at peace with it now, and I feel like I can open up to it and I can close it as I please because for some of the trips that I've done, I can't be social at all after I come home from a long expedition, and that's also pretty common. If you spend time alone, that it's hard to go into a bar with a bunch of people. But for me, it got to another level where sometimes I can't go in a room without picking up everybody's feelings and energy, and it's like completely overwhelming. And it's nothing to do with different like seeing people again because I've done this for years now where I come back from an expedition and go immediately back to a party or being social again, but it's changed over the years where if I don't close myself off a little bit before I go and see people in out in the normal world again, I kind of suck up all of everybody's energy, and it's kind of hard going back to having a conversation with strangers or friends when you almost can tell what is wrong with them, like how they're feeling. They're putting up a facade, and you can see straight through it. And you're just kind of like, "Hey, do you want to talk about what's going on?" And you can't just do that with people because that scares the shit out of them.
no, that's not weird. I think exactly what that is. It's similar to kind of soldiers, where they are experiencing war and the trauma of war, and then they come home and they don't decompress, and now like they're doing the dishes and they have like a wife and like a family that they haven't seen in like a year, and they have to live that life now. It's the decompressing process needs to happen, and I think when you're alone in the woods or you're just alone in general for a couple months or however long, you become not desensitized, but you have to evaluate yourself, and you're very honest about things, and you're not used to kind of experiencing other people and what their emotions are going through, and that part of your brain kind of shuts off. So when you come back, I imagine turning that back on, it's very overwhelming for your brain to just all of a sudden, oh, now all these people, they all have emotions, they all have their own lives, and you have to be considerate of that. That's a lot when you when you turn that part of your brain off. And I think that's similar to the soldiers and not having time to decompress when they come home. It's just that one part of your brain shuts off where, like, you're compassionate towards your family. You have to worry about doing the dishes. You have to do this. You have to do that. And just, a couple days ago, you were, you know, shooting a rifle at people, or you were, dropping bombs on people, or you were experiencing all these, tragic things. So I don't think that sounds weird at all. I think that's just how brains work.
Yeah, it is. It's just that I can tell that there is a difference from what you're talking about. I know what you mean. Like the decompression thing is a very real thing. Like the post adventure syndrome is a thing, right? And I think that goes to anything when you do something outside the normal and you come back to the normal life. Everybody has a downer, right? Even if it is coming out of war, I think everybody has a downer because whoa, I'm back in this normal life now, and nobody can really figure out how to go back instantly. But what I'm talking about is more, it's like I've let myself be open so much to the energies around in nature that when I come home I'm still that open, and physically can feel what everybody's feeling, and it's, I don't know how to explain it. It's very draining, it's very exhausting. And I've learned to shut it off now because, like I said, there is a difference from before since I started the spiritual journey. And I don't know, maybe you'll experience it too when if you try psychedelics. You're definitely going to see the world a little bit differently afterwards, I think. But yeah, it's like this for a lot of people. I feel like like you said, the decompression, but I also think there's a difference. There's a difference from that and being an open channel to what everybody is feeling or thinking. Or okay, let me put it this way. I'm going to tell you another story, and it's also kind of whack. Okay, so you just have to have an open mind. um in August, late August, I decided to meditate on this friend of mine who has knee problems, and I was meditating, and he's an older guy, and I meditated, and I asked the meditation, why is he struggling so much with his knees? What is the problem? And I got up a vision of him, of his mother, and his mother has died, and I've never seen a picture of his mom. I've never I don't know what she looks like. I don't know who she was or what she was as a person, but I got the complete essence of her, how she looked, and I could see his entire childhood came up for me. I didn't know that he had pets as a child, and after the meditation, I just like completely, I went straight to him and told them everything, and he confirmed everything that I've seen, and that for me was the confirmation I needed after months or even years of having all of these symptoms that I can't explain to anyone. But he confirmed everything I've seen and was kind of baffled because how am I supposed to know what his mother used to look
Yeah.
like or
Whoa.
before she died? And I don't know. I didn't know that he had cats when he was little. I could see his dead cats. I could see his the road he used to walk every day for school, and it was just it's that's what I'm talking about. Like being open, you kind of open yourself if you allow yourself, but it's not something I can do on an everyday basis because it's really really draining and a lot for the normal brain to process. um
Hmm.
yeah, and that's what I mean when I come out of a long expedition in nature. I'm just like a fucking open channel. I can take in everything and see things, and it's scary because I'm used to being on my own and with dogs, and I can take whatever I see in nature and whatever, it's okay, I can handle it, but I can't handle it with other people. I'm not there yet where I can uh, process information with everybody else in their life because it's scary. It's too much for me, and that's what I'm talking about. Like it's super new age. It's very alternative, but for me, it's become a reality that has. It's like I want to say it's almost like a gift that's been given to me, and I think it's because I finally let myself um, be open by being alone and being um, alone for a longer time and being still. I don't know how else to explain it. Yeah.
It's kind of wild.
It's kind of wild. I haven't told almost anyone about this because it's so whacked, but I guess I'm telling it on a podcast now. And see, that's the kind of things I can't say. I can't tell people, my followers, like, yeah, I'm experiencing these things where I can see somebody's dead mom because it makes me sound like I'm completely lost my shit, but I haven't. I'm still a normal person.
Mm.
Um,
Well, there's some things that are difficult to talk about without. I think more people will maybe not understand. They will empathize.
yeah,
Maybe that's not the right word either.
maybe there was a
I don't think people. I mean, some people will probably think you're fucking crazy if I'm being honest. Some people are going to
oh,
be
for
like,
sure.
You're a whack job." But I don't think if you were to. I mean, people are going to listen to this. I don't know. Maybe they think you're crazy. I don't think you're crazy. I think you are living a very unique experience in a very unique place, and unique things happen to unique people in unique places.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
have no explanation for it, to be honest with you. Besides that, I know it's kind of a fun thing that's going on, and it can be also terrifying. And I let it, now that I'm back in my routine here with my everyday life, I kind of shut it off. And then I'm planning on being out all winter again, and I'm pretty sure that when I get out there and within 2 weeks, it's going to be completely open again, and I'm going to start picking up on things. And it's like I'm looking forward to it. At the same time, I'm like, it's going to be what's going to happen this time, because I can handle being cold and like 50 below, and I can handle being scared of like wild animals or whatever it's going on, the situation. I feel like I can handle it, but I don't know always if I can handle what happens to me that I can't explain. Sometimes it's overwhelming.
well, it's very primal. I think what you're doing, and you're connecting this spot, this part of our brains that exists. I mean, you think of where we were a couple thousand years ago as humans.
Yeah,
It's a
there
very
was a lot more
primal.
spirituality before, I think, before we closed off to it as a society.
I think so as well. I don't know too much of the history behind it, but I do know that way back in the day, it's believed that, early humans and kind of what we consider our ancestors were very spiritual individuals, and especially living in, because back then anywhere was a harsh condition. You could live on, you know, Hawaii, and that's harsh because you don't have modern technologies. You're living out in the elements. You're on an island, living in Alaska, living in what's modern day America, living in what's modern day Europe. Everything is a harsh condition, and I think anything in nature that requires you to activate that kind of primal brain, um, I think you're going to experience different things, and your brain is going to work a different way because it has to. Um, but it
That's
exists in all of us.
actually, I never thought about that before, and I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't experienced it, but I do think, and it's shown that there's certain recessive things in our brain that get tapped into with certain experiences. Like, your fight or flight, that's something that comes from when we were primal, running around, worrying about saber tooths and mammoths and shit. Um, so I think when you connect with that part of your brain in a way that is very real, I think people try to simulate that, like adrenaline junkies and other things like that. They try and simulate um, to stimulate parts of their brain, but with you and what you're doing and what other people are doing, they're putting themselves in a very primal situation where you're going out into nature and you're being alone for however long. Yeah, I mean, you said you're going out for the whole winter. You're going out for months, where you have to survive, and it's a very instinctual thing to survive. Um, I
Yeah.
imagine that's just going to activate parts of your brain that most people don't have activated at all in their entire lives because they don't have to.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I'm sure that's part of it for sure. I never really felt though, like when I'm out on an expedition or anything, that there's seldom times I feel like I have to survive, because I have my food with me, and I do some hunting and stuff, but the dogs have their food, and I'm covered in the way, and I feel like I have the good gear, and I have the knowledge to know what I get into. If I was to break through the ice, of course, that would be that kind of moment where you're kind of you're maybe between life and death if it's severe enough. But for the most part, I feel like when I'm out there, it's not about survival. I'm just kind of living in the moment, very much in the moment. Versus when you're living at home, you're kind of always living in the future. I'm very bad at being in the moment at home because I
Mm.
always have things to do and things to plan. But yeah, in the moments of survival that I've had a few of those in my life, where it's like I have to fucking figure out what I'm doing right now, or this is gonna be really bad. I Yeah, I can tell you that at that time, I feel like you're just so full of adrenaline that there's nothing spiritual about you almost. You're just kind of like very much in your physical body feeling I have to do something right now versus being out there and you're just kind of still and doing your daily chores and wandering around. And can you see the difference what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I maybe I misspoke when it comes to like survival, and talking about that primitive part of our brain. I think to if you were to go back a couple thousand years to the humans or whatever scientific version of humans existed, it wasn't all just survival. Obviously, there were, they're not all just always in a moment where it's like, oh shit, I'm being hunted by a saber tooth. I think just
Yeah.
living out in nature in general.
Yeah.
Um, that's more what I meant.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I get it. I agree.
yeah, it's a very primitive thing, and I think it's good to connect with that part of your brain. I just don't think a lot of people have the confidence nor the physical ability to do so. I think after you've been in normal society for 30 years functioning, like let's say you grew up in New York City, you're not going to one day be like, you want to know what I want to go and do? I want to go live in Alaska off the grid. Um,
No,
Maybe
that's
some people do.
Yeah, oh, no, for sure. I think I agree with you, and honestly, it makes me kind of sad to think about how many people don't have the ability or the confidence to do something like that, even if it's just like a normal backcountry camping trip for the weekend. It, I wish I could be a part of influencing that, like how easy it can be, But it's like you said, people are stuck in a mindset that is the society today that it seems impossible for a lot of people, maybe for most people even.
Yeah, and it seems almost unattainable to them. Like I have a buddy, he is I'm not going to say his name or what business he is. A very 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 famous well-known um sunglasses company. He's
Mhm.
the owner of it. And while he has all of this money and all of this ability to do whatever, I was talking to him about hunting and he's like, why would I do that? And I'm like, why don't you just go out hunting, go on a hunting trip? And it's very like unattainable mentally for some people because it's just not something that they've either had to do or had any desire to do or had any like it's just mentally not there for them. They can't see themselves doing it. And then I think there's also a group of people who see it kind of like what we were talking about earlier when it comes to marketing and equipment. It's very trendy. Oh, look at this outdoor jacket that I have. And it happens with sports, like people wearing like athletic gear when they don't do any types of athletic, like seeing a fat person wear Under Armour. I'm always just like, why are you wearing, like, wear whatever you want, obviously.
Mhm.
But I'm like, you know, you're 30 years old and 400 pounds and you're wearing athletic like gear. Like it's weird. And I think that happens a lot with outdoor stuff too, where it's like, oh yeah, let's go camping. And then, they hop in a camper. They're not out in the woods. They're on a campground with hundreds of other families and they have coolers full of, like hot dogs and fun stuff, which is fine. Um, but
Yeah,
I don't think what you
and
do is very attainable for a lot of people.
no, I've learned that it isn't. I've actually had to go through a bit of a self discovery there, where I think that everything I do is attainable for everybody, and everybody could be in the same physical shape or the same mentality. But I realized that it's not like that, and we are all different in that way. How we were groomed as, how we were as child, and how we were raised, and I I have to learn to respect that with people because I had troubles respecting that before. Like, what's the problem? Just go do it. And I realize now that that's not the case. And it's the same for me. Like, I couldn't just go live in a big city and think that I would actually find my way around and thrive and have a corporate job, I know for a fact that I just couldn't do that. It's not within me to do that. So I had to like take a good look at myself and be like, if I can't do that, then obviously I have to respect if people can't do what I do. So yeah.
Yeah, but I do think it's important to at least try at one point to do a little bit of everything. Like, you should go out. Like, I think everybody should try and get out into the woods and, not put themselves in a dangerous situation. Obviously, I'm not saying go out there with like a knife and think that you're going to survive like 10 days on your own with no experience. Like, don't do that.
No.
But just, go and expose yourself to different things and maybe go visit a city if you've never been to one. Go
Yeah.
outside in nature if you've never been. Like,
You know,
just
it's
try
so
and
funny
expose
you
yourself.
say this because I just yesterday I called my friends like I said, and I'm like, you guys need to drag me out of my bubble and please make me be social because I've been very unsocial now for a long time, just focusing on the dogs. And yesterday I just woke up with this like feeling like I need social life. I need to talk to people, and so I booked this whole weekend full of things that I'm gonna do with friends. And as much as I know that I kind of probably would try to get out of it and just be here and do my own thing, I'm like determined to just go try some new things and go and be social with some new people. And it doesn't make me uncomfortable in the way because I don't have social anxiety. It's just more that I gotten to the point where I don't feel like I need anyone besides me and the dogs. And it's a dangerous place to be because you can quickly tip over to the other side of it where you're just like, oh, I don't need people ever at all. But obviously, people need people. So I'm glad I can recognize that in myself and be like, okay, you hit the point where you need somebody, and then I can call my friends, and they know when I call them for that shit, they will make sure that I meet up.
Are these your friends in Alaska?
Yeah, these are friends in Alaska. I have a big community of friends here. Actually, I it's just that the more older I get, the more and more weird I get about just spending more and more time alone and being with the dogs. I'm so content with my life up here, and it's only 35 minutes to town, and I can go and hang out with friends. But I choose not to, and I don't wish to go to a bar just to have a beer. Like Alaskans, they drink a lot. It's a kind of social way to hang out, and I used to be big fan of that, but now I'm more like I don't wish to just drink to hang out. So I isolate myself a lot, and I don't have any problems with it. But I am glad that I can see now that okay, I've gotten to the point where now I need to be social for a weekend at least, and I can go do that.
Hmm. So it's kind of like a meter, Like, I think of a video game that has like a health meter where it's like food, water, social. Um, Sometimes that meter gets a little low and you got to go out and socialize.
Yeah, and my friends were
But
always
we're
like,
social creatures.
"Yeah, we are social creatures, and there's only so much you can talk about with the dogs." And I can always call people and stuff, but I tend to push the limit quite. I just tend to push it more and more each year. I spend more and more time alone doing what I love, and it gets harder and harder to come back to the normal social aspect. And that's I don't want to become that person that's always by yourself because that is. I think you can thrive in it, but I think in the end of the day, everybody needs people in some sort of way. And
Hmm.
it's just gotten worse the older I get, and I wish to try not to be a completely woodswoman where I have nobody. So I'm trying to initiate some things myself. I'm actually going pumpkin carving this weekend, believe it or not.
Do they have pumpkins in Alaska?
They do. Yep. They have lots of
That's
pumpkins and
outstanding.
lots of bars and fun stuff. I'm gonna do like a swing dancing lessons. I love to swing dance. So I'm just doing all of these things that I'm not used to and probably wouldn't spend time or money on doing. But I decided I made a list last night. I was like, okay, get your shit together, try something new. You're about to spend the whole winter alone. You might as well go fucking be social before you leave.
Now, what does your family think whenever, because you go out on expedition alone? Do you like call them beforehand? You're like, hey, mom, I'm going out in the woods. You won't hear from me for a couple months?
Yeah, but I usually bring a satellite device so I can text them a couple times during my stay. But I do call her before and tell her I'm leaving. You know how it goes because I've done this for 10 years. She's used to it. Um, they in the beginning it was hard because I quit school when I was 18 to do this full time, and my mom is highly educated, and she was on my neck for years about going back to school. And she finally, a couple years ago, she stopped nagging about it and realizing, okay, do what you love to do, be happy. And she's
Hmm.
not gonna have sleepless nights anymore. She just accepts that I'm doing this on my own risk and I'm being happy doing it. So I've always thought to myself, if I die out there, then I've lived a pretty good life. I don't wish to die, but if I do, it's fine.
Do you see yourself when you're like 60 years old still being out there?
When I'm 60 years old,
Yeah.
oh yeah, no, I still do. If I still have my health and my body is physically still able, I would like to do that. And I actually made the decision that I don't think I'm gonna have any kids because I prefer to have the freedom of doing what I'm doing right now and not have to consider children. Because I mean, you can't just take children out with you in 50 below in January and be like, okay, we're gonna mush dogs now for a month. Like, just can't do that.
Well, I mean, you could, but CPS might. I don't know. CPS probably doesn't come up there and give a fuck, to be honest.
I mean, you could, like technically, physically, you could,
Yeah, you could, but
yeah.
it's
But I
probably not
just
the
feel
best
like
thing to do with a kid.
no, and especially, yeah, I just decided that I have enough freedom and my life is so adventurous the way it is. I don't think that I would sacrifice any of that for having a family. And that's another thing about growing up, you just make these decisions. And well, I can't really. I'm 28. I guess when I'm 35 might change and my, what do you call it? The uterus might start screaming, but I honestly doubt it.
Hmm. I will say having kids, it's not for everybody. I'm not going to pretend and be like, yeah, being a dad has made me realize that everybody needs to be a dad or a mom. I don't think that's the case. I think some people are just better not being parents, and that's not because they wouldn't be good parents. It's just, for them and their lives, it's just not necessary for them. For me, I always felt like I had to be a dad, and I'm very happy to be a dad, and it's one of the best things that's happened to me. But no, I don't think it's weird at all. I know plenty of people actually who are like, I'm never having kids. And they don't even, they're not doing what you're doing. They just have like a regular job. One of them is a teacher, and they're like, yeah, I see kids all day, every day. Why would I want more of that in my life?
Yeah,
um,
I talked to my mom last night on the phone, and we had this exact conversation about kids, and she said that you covered the ground with your mother. What do you call it? Maternity instincts. She said you covered it with your dogs. You have somebody you can care for and love and cradle. But so she said if you didn't have that, it might be different. So she's like finally with me on the same page that I'm probably not giving her grandchildren, which is great. And it made me realize that I still have sort of kids. The 15 dogs, I can't just leave them in the dog yard and feed them once a day. They require a lot of attention and love.
yes.
So I feel like I get some of it, the parenting, but obviously it's easier than having an actual child, I feel like.
Now I know in some cultures in Europe, like if you don't have kids, like you're dishonoring your family. What's that culture kind of like in Norway?
I would say that Norway is becoming more and more. People are having children pretty late or not at all because women are more. They're more obtained with their careers and being highly educated. So I feel like it's kind of shifting. We're not having as much kids anymore in Norway. And it's not frowned upon. It's still like a social stigma anywhere in the world if you're a woman in your 30s and you don't want if you don't want children. But I do think it's becoming more and more accepted. I think it's more traditional. The way of family is more traditional in the US than it is in Norway. And I have had quite the culture shock on several different things moving from Europe to the US.
Yeah, but you're in Alaska. I imagine what's going on in Alaska and the culture up there is very different than what's going on in like mainland America.
It depends. Alaska is a very religious state, and I feel like it's still very church based in many areas of Alaska. Fairbanks is very church state. No, sorry, church. What do you call it? Like, yeah, just very religious. But
Mhm.
we have a funny saying here. It's like the left side of town is the hippie side of town where there's a lot of travelers and foreign people that come to live, and then you have the right side of town that it's more religious and more traditional family life and way of living. So um, I don't know. People here do a little bit of everything. You have the traditional families that go to church, and you have religion and go to school and all the normal things. And then you have a lot of people that are in their 40s and they're in bands and they're ski joring all winter and saunaing with 50 other people. And it's just kind of a cool mix of culture.
Saunas are great. Speaking of saunas, saunas are fucking great. That was one of my most favorite things about visiting Europe is saunas. Saunas are fucking excellent.
I know. You should
Um,
go to Finland. That's the sauna nation of the world.
yep. So when I was in Estonia, we used to take the ferry over to Finland. My buddy ended up getting married to a Finnish woman,
Oh,
but yeah, they had this thing that you would do every night with the Finnish. Well, we did with the Estonian army, where you would go into the sauna after your shower, and you every 30 dudes in a sauna, and you stay there for like 30 minutes, sometimes like 45, and then you would go outside and jump into like a snow pile. And it's
yes.
supposed to be really, really good for you, but it was it's part of doing that hard shit that I try and do. I'm like, man, I'm really warm and toasty right now. I don't want to jump into a pile of snow. Like that's hard. Um,
Yeah,
but you did it.
that's a thing in Norway as well, actually, and I want to say in Alaska it's pretty sauna parties are pretty common up here. Actually, I'm gonna light up the sauna today to do, but I don't have enough snow to jump into. But yeah, that's got amazing health benefits, and I just love coming home from like a cold dog run, and it's like 40 below, and the sauna is hot and waiting for you, and you feed the dogs, everybody's happy and tired, and you just go up to the sauna and strip your clothes off, and you're in the sauna just like, yeah, I deserve
Yep.
this.
It is so good for you. I wish they were more common here in America. There was something where it's like if you do the sauna, it's something like 4 days a week for like 20 to 30 minutes, 4 days a week. You reduce like all risks of death, like all known causes of death by like 40%. It's something stupid. It's so good for you.
That's crazy. Yeah, everybody should sauna, but I feel like it's kind of hard to have a sauna. Let's say in Texas, it's too hot.
Yeah. Yeah, but in the world of like climate control and everything, like somebody has a house that has air conditioning running 24/7, they get in the sauna and then, you know,
Yeah. No,
or
I
maybe
think.
like a cold bath or like an ice bath to
Yep.
counter that.
Yep. I think that there's plenty of different ways of obtaining your health besides going to the doctor. I truly believe that, and uh, I see that in Europe a little bit more. There's more history and culture around that than it is in the U.S. But then again, you can't really. It's hard to implement the European way in the U.S. And I've learned that the hard way with a lot of things, especially. Just gonna say it like the dating culture here versus in Norway is so different, and it baffled me a couple times just
How so?
how many. Oh, how so?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just I don't know if this is a thing all over the state. I can't judge for all of it, but I've noticed that it's quite common to when you're dating after a few dates, it's like a lot of people traditionally you're like together after a few dates. You're
Mm,
and
mhm.
I've in my opinion, like it takes me a couple months or half a year at least to decide like whether let's go for this and be a couple, and I've noticed that with when I have been dating here in Alaska that it's definitely been more quicker than I'm used to, and it's been a little intimidating.
Yeah, I mean, people I've lived in Europe for a couple years and I grew up in America. I find in America people are very eager to the point of failure where they jump into shit too quickly. Just in general, not just relationships, but I think overall as a culture, we are very eager and we are very aggressive when it comes to obtaining certain things that we deem normal in our life. It's normal for most people to be in a relationship and people aggressively want to be in a relationship, um, or like having a job or going to college or whatever that is. And I never went to college. I think that stuff is dumb, but um,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know what you're saying. Like I agree with you. There's more. I think almost it's like more tradition too. Maybe like you said, there's certain things in life you should have, and people are very fast about trying to get to that point, the obtaining all these things and status. And for me, it's I just get intimidated by that because I think moving too fast in on anything is not the right choice for me at least. And yeah, I mean, met a lot of nice people here, and everybody's really, really. I like Americans a lot because they're so friendly and open about things. But um, moving that fast sometimes have definitely screwed me.
well, that's because you're not from one of those countries. Like our producer's from England, and I
Yeah,
remind him constantly that we won the war. Like you're from Norway. Like we don't have any shit with Norway. We don't have anything to shit talk about Norway.
right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it is funny though. I learned my way around the American culture now, and I like it. I like the fact that you can go and be social here and have like one beer at a brewery where you meet all your friends and that's it. In Norway, there's no such thing. Like if we go to have a beer, we're going to hammer down party. There's like all or nothing in Norway, and that's like the first thing I had to learn, that you don't drink to get drunk here. You drink to be social.
Yeah, I was telling you a little bit before the show. I've like stepped foot in Norway on like a connecting flight, and then I ended up in Sweden. But like when you drink in some of these countries, like Sweden, I imagine is kind of similar to Norway. When you drink, you're fucking drinking. Like you better be fucking drinking. It's not just one or two beers. It is you are getting all of the beers.
I know. It's horrible because it's a weird way we don't drink in the weekdays in Norway. It's kind of frowned upon. So that when weekend come around, Friday and Saturday, it's like all or nothing, and we don't waste our money because it's so expensive in Norway too to go out and drink. So then it's like you have to make it worth it. Kind of that's the mentality, and that's something I
Mhm.
don't miss about being home is that we can just go out here and be social and have a beer or two, and everybody's fine. Versus in Norway, it's like oh, you got to go out and the next day is going to be shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the culture, I don't know. I like a lot of things about kind of European culture, but I also I mean, I'm America's my home. I love a lot of things about American culture, but I think I love that you got to experience it in kind of the opposite way that I have, where now you're living in America for, um, you've been out here for 10 years, you said?
Oh, no, I've been here for 3 years.
Okay.
Yep.
Why did I think? Oh, 10 years you have been doing what you're doing. I got you. I got you.
Yep.
So you've been out here for about 3 years. I lived in Europe for like 2.5 years. So you're kind of experiencing what I have, just the opposite when it comes to the cultures. And you're in Alaska. I was never in Alaska. Um,
Yeah,
that's
I
kind
like it. It's good for people to move around a little bit and see the world differently. And it also made me get a greater respect for people that are religious because I have friends that are highly religious and myself not being religious. And quite honestly, I've always kind of been I just grew up in a household that wasn't and was highly against it. I had to lose some of those judgments that I had and accept people that choose to be very religious, and that's been good for me to see that people are still people even if they are highly religious, and you know, yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in a very religious family, and then I became not religious at all. And I think I had kind of like a bad taste in my mouth, and I'm like, but then as I kind of grew up and matured a little bit, I'm like, oh, people are just people. Like I don't like it doesn't matter to me who they pray to or what they want to do. Like as long as they're nice people, like that's all I care about.
Yeah, same. That's the same for me. So it's been good. You change yourself a little bit when you get out of your comfort zone of your own country. I think everybody should travel a little bit at least and see a
Yeah,
different part of the world.
I agree.
Mhm.
Well, I got one more topic. I know I've taken up a lot of your time, and you probably have a lot more shit
No,
to
you're
do.
fine. I put off time for this today, so we're good.
Well, I really appreciate that. Um, so you were up in Alaska during COVID when all this craziness was going on. What was that like up there?
Well, if I'm gonna be honest, we didn't really notice much of the COVID up here besides the native villages closing down. And the reason they did that is because the native villages don't have access to hospitals and immediate care, right? They got to be medevaced out. The the gym and social things were closed for a little bit, and then it seemed like everything just opened up again in 2020, like after a few months, and then everybody was still social, going to the bars, and I think the lower 48 experienced a lot more closure than we did in Alaska, and I don't know why, but for me, I didn't feel any difference. Also, because I was just doing what I was still doing, which was being, up here doing dogs, and for the most part, keeping to myself. And yeah, I thrived in COVID because it was like everyday life, basically, except for wearing the mask to the grocery store. But besides that, I didn't feel any difference. I know Norway was a completely different story. They shut down the country for 2 years.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of why I was asking because I know a lot of things that happen up in Alaska or Hawaii are very different than what happens in like the main 48. You call it the lower 48. Um, like
Yeah,
some things apply and then some things kind of don't apply. I have buddies that got stationed out in some of the military bases in Alaska, and I was talking to them, and they're like, a lot of things were ignored and a lot of things weren't. It was just weird. So I was curious your experience with it.
yeah, no, I didn't really notice any difference, to be honest with you. I thought it was quite hilarious how the rest of the world was shutting down, and I was talking to my friends in Norway and in Alaska. It was like, yeah, the gym's still open and everything's running normally. It was kind of funny that way. But like I said, I live up here and do my own thing anyway, so I didn't really experience the COVID restrictions that much. But I know back home from my mom and friends that it was pretty rough on people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was it was an interesting time. So for you, if anything happens, is there a hospital nearby for you, or you were kind of more dependent on home
Um,
remedies and?
no, I actually, if I have to go to a hospital, it would take me about 40 to 45 minutes to get there. And there is times of the year where it can be harder to go to town, like typically spring breakup or like a really big snowstorm. We had one in December, and I had to put my alarm on every 3 hours because it was snowing and raining so hard that I had to go plow the road every 3 hours. And at some point, the snow was so heavy with rain, wet, that I couldn't plow, and I was stuck at the house for 7 days without getting out. And I was fine. I had dog food and I had my food, and I was okay with it. But in those situations, I feel like I could get out if I wanted to. I just get on the snow machine and get somebody to pick me up somewhere close to the main road. Or um and in terms of the dogs, I've had some incidents that been really horrific. I've had one dog that had an epileptic seizure, and I called the vet and I say, like, come in immediately, because the longer she has a seizure, the more chance it is she'll be brain dead. And I'm like, fuck, I'm 40 minutes outside of town, like, is that going to be too long? And she was like, I don't know, just come here as soon as possible. And so yeah, there's some situations where it's like I feel like if it was really bad, if I was to chainsaw my leg or something, I would probably be in trouble. But I can always get to care if I need to. And I've learned over the years to take care of my own dogs in many ways. I have a whole medical supply here, and I stitch up their wounds and do stuff on my own because I don't want to go to the vet for everything, and just learn how to do things on my own. Because yeah, I don't want to be depending on everyone else. And especially if I'm in the woods for months and a dog has a big injury, I feel like for the most part I could take care of it, but some things I can't.
Yeah, of course, but you kind of have to. That's kind of what I was getting at with the situation that you're in. I imagine you have to be very self-dependent when it comes to things that a lot of people are very dependent on others for.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I feel like I'm close enough to town that if it was really an emergency, there's not it's not a problem. It's worse if something happened in the woods to me, like, because if I'm out there, like really out there, then I've thought about this scenario many times. Like, it would take probably a day for somebody to reach me if I really needed to be helicoptered out or something. Because what if the weather is not good? And I mean, I've constantly had this feeling, like, or this vision of what if I get mauled by a bear, like, and I'm alone out there with the dogs, and like how would I be rescued in time if I'm in the North Slope of the Brooks Range? Like, I just these are things that I just have to think about could happen, but I'm not going to allow it to happen, and I just have to deal with it if it does. But being home here outside of Fairbanks, I don't really feel any immediate threat to my life or anything. I don't really do that when I'm out either. I'm just really cautious about things. And when I'm chainsawing, I'm always wearing my chaps and being careful. And I've done some chainsawing here over the years where I've felt this is not smart. This is like the tree would pop right up after I chainsaw, and the chainsaw would like pop right towards me, and it would be a light saw, so I could stop it. But it's like those situations, I just be like, okay, now I pushed the limit. I don't need to chainsaw the rest of this tree.
Yeah, especially frozen wood. I grew up on a sawmill, and having to cut firewood when wood freezes, that water in there freezes, and you go to cut through it, it explodes sometimes, and it's dangerous when you're holding a saw.
Yeah, I definitely have huge respect for the tools that I've used here. And there's a thing here that the driveway has a tendency to drop trees over the driveway. Like this summer, in I think it was early August, 13 trees dropped in the driveway, and
Jeez.
nobody could get in or out. It was a windstorm came through, and just like trees were dropping freaking everywhere. And when it calmed down, I went down to start working on the trees, and there was a couple of them that were so big, and they were like hanging high, so you had to like lift the chainsaw to get cut through them. And that's when I was like, you don't feel completely safe what you're doing. And I just there's some situations, even being home, where I feel like, ugh, this isn't safe.
Yeah, but the thing is that sometimes you have to do things that are you have to take those calculated risks. Like you can't just leave those trees there. You have to you have to move the trees.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and
in
I
order
had
to get to
helpers
it
with
some
me at
places.
least. Like there was volunteer workers here that helped me, but it's just kind of like those things that happen sometimes. And I've driven off the road with the truck because it's too much snow, and you're just kind of like, like you feel like you're risking your life, but you're not really. You're just pushing the limit a little too much.
Mhm.
And usually ends up being fine. And it's just more so when I'm alone, completely alone, that I feel like I have to take the extra measurements of being careful, because there's people that have died on a four-wheeler up here training dogs, because they come in a steep turn or whatever, and then they flip the four-wheeler and they land underneath it. And there was somebody who
Oh,
died like that 2 years ago training their dogs. And it's just all the things you have to think about.
yeah. Oof.
And like right
Uh,
now, it's super glazed with ice on all my trails and my roads that I train on, and I'm just like very cautious about. And then I just decide, okay, do I want to train a full team or do I want to train half a team? I'm gonna go with half a team because it is slippery, and that means I have to do 2 rounds, right? Because I gotta train 2 teams of dogs instead of one. But it's worth it. Then I don't have to worry about them pulling so hard that the four-wheeler can slide.
mhm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
How long is that moose gonna last you? For reference for everybody listening, I mean, you can tell the story. I think that would be cool about your moose. But recently, you went on a moose hunt and you got yourself a moose.
mm. Yes. So the float was a 10-day float with a canoe, and there was a super interesting story because we didn't see any moose at all until day 8. And I woke up in the middle of the night, so we were just sleeping out on the ground. We didn't have any tents. We did have a tent, but we chose not to. It was just clear sky and all that. And I wake up in the middle of the night. I'm just like, I have the rifle next to me, and I thought it was a freaking grizzly coming into camp because it made so much noise. And I wake up my hunting partner. I'm just like, something's coming into camp. Like we gotta be ready. And the freaking huge bull moose came walking right next to camp, like 15 feet from where we were sleeping. And it was pitch dark, and it was pissed off because there was another bull moose in the area. So they actually were fighting over a cow, and he was so pissed off. And my hunting partner was like, "Do not don't move, because if he hears any twigs breaking or anything, he's gonna think that it's another moose behind and charge." So we had to lay there for like 40 minutes listening to this bull moose being pissed off and roaring into the dark and fighting this other bull. And they finally cut it off, and we got up super early in the morning, called it in, and I shot it, um, you know 20 feet from camp, which is the most perfect scenario you can have. And
Absolutely.
it's gonna last for, yeah, probably a year or so, the moose, I think, depending on how many volunteers I choose to have there over the next year.
Wow.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, you think that the hard part is the hunting. That's the easy part because once you have
Oh
to,
yeah.
quarter up this whole thing, and I always been like, "Oh, I can do everything on my own, and I can probably hunt a moose alone." No, I cannot ever hunt a moose on my own and think that I can lift those hindquarters, even carry them. I couldn't even lift it off the ground because they're so big and so heavy. But we got it into the canoe, and we were floating down for another 2 days, and I swear to you, my canoe would barely move forward. So my abs were like popping, trying to reach the end destination where the road finally came in. And then we got back home, and I was like, "Oh yes, we're home. Like we're done with the hard part." No, then we had to cut meat for
Nope.
5 days, get all of it, into steaks and all that stuff. And yeah, it's probably gonna last over a year, and it's really nice to fill the freezer that way and feel like you have your own fish and meat in the freezer. You don't have to pay for any of that, but it is definitely a lot of work, and most people probably send it in to processors because it's like, I don't know, 600 to 800 bucks to process a whole moose. But I didn't want to pay that money, so it was like, we're doing this. We're just gonna drink beer and listen to Dire Straits for 5 days straight and do this thing.
Yeah, I was watching your TikTok stories, or was it your Instagram story? I was watching something where you were drinking and having fun. Um, yeah,
Yeah, we were
moose are
popping a
fucking.
beer at 12 in the afternoon, just like, okay, gotta get through this.
I mean, you have to. You're dealing with how much weight? How much weight was that? Like not total weight after you process it meat wise. How much weight did you get?
Um, I asked, and we estimated around 700 to 800 pounds of meat. Yeah, I think that's what it
Jeez.
was. I can't tell you for sure because we didn't weigh it, but that's what we estimated that we had in meat. And then, of course, some of it was not um, salvageable, and just scraps and stuff, a lot of fat. But yeah, it was a lot of meat to cut down. And if you want to do a good job, you cut off all the tendons and the chewy parts. And that's why it took us 5 days because we really were being tedious about it.
Oh my lord.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, any hunt when you take the animal, that's like the easiest, and then processing it is just it's like the least fun part too because you're like hunting. You're like, yeah, I'm hunting, and then like it dawns on you, you're like, oh, I gotta process this whole thing now. Oh, I gotta move this whole thing now. Like a moose. I mean, you were like you said, ideal situation, like 20 feet from your camp. Like that is so nice.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
No, it was perfect. Can you imagine if we shot it like a mile from camp or from the canoes and had
oh,
to truck, like carry the whole thing? I mean, that would have been horrible. And we did have to carry all our gear and canoes and the moose over a portage, but the portage was not as long as we expected. So it was like a pleasant surprise that it was shorter than we thought. But I mean, the problem, it was really enjoyable to get it out of there. The problem was, I mean, not the problem, but the hard part was being in the house for 5 days, cutting up that moose from morning till night. That kind of got to me.
yeah, I imagine that is just your hands must have been so fucking sore holding a knife that long. Oh my god.
Yeah, and just the poor little meat processors we had was just like this machine that grinds it up, and it definitely wasn't big enough for grinding that many 100 pounds of meat. So it got worked pretty hard. But I also decided to make some traditional stuff like lots of sausages, and that just creates extra work, but it's worth it, because I don't believe that you're gonna eat a whole moose worth of steaks. You're just not going to. So you want to make all different like stuff of like make pepperoni sticks, and you want to make stew meat and soup meat and grind it up for pizza and spaghetti and all that. And it just, if you put effort in, you're gonna eat it. If you just make all into steaks, you're not gonna eat it all.
Yeah, and you don't want to waste any part of an animal like that.
No,
Um,
no, for sure.
hmm.
And that's another thing. If you send it into processors, there tend to be a lot more waste. um I think I heard somewhere there could be up to 30% more waste than if you just cut it all down yourself, because then you're more tedious about it, because the processors have countless amounts of animal they're going to process during the fall, right? So they're busy and they want to get it done.
Yeah, their incentive isn't the same as yours. Your incentive is I want this moose because I shot this moose to fill my freezer. Their incentive is I got paid to do this. I'm going to get it done as soon as possible so I can continue to get paid. Um,
Yeah. But they do a good job. It's not that. I just think that it's like you said, it's your moose, so you want the most out of it. And it's also so nice to like give meat to somebody, your friends for Christmas or something. You know, you give them some nice sausages and you put the work into it. So I feel like we did a good job, but it was definitely tedious work.
Yeah, I can imagine. Processing a deer is tedious. Processing a moose is like, geez, you don't get. I'm trying to think. You get maybe, depending on the deer, yeah, you're getting like 10 times more meat out of a moose than like a white-tailed deer. So
Yeah,
that's like 10 times the work. Oh my lord. At
yeah.
least.
Yeah, and we were only 2 people too. I was like, "Should we call somebody to help us? They can get some meat or something," but we were like, "Yeah, nobody's gonna stick around for a whole day anyway, so we might as well just do it." So, it was fun though. It's just that kind of thing that you almost turn into a semi-alcoholic by the end of it because 'cause you're just sick of it. Oh, yeah. But it's good. Now we have the freezer full, and I have, salmon and halibut and, black bear and moose and some caribou from last year, so it's like it's stocked.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, so you could just thrive up there if you really wanted to isolate yourself. I know you said you're trying not to, but hypothetically, a really bad like year comes by where you can't get to town. It sounds like you would be okay.
Yeah, except you would need some greens though, you know, so you don't just eat meat. But yeah, I feel like with the food prices going up so badly right now, I think it's great to not have to buy any red meat or fish, but I only have to buy normal stuff and then the greens because I don't have a winter garden. But it feels
Mm.
so nice to be self sufficient that way because you can't even do that in Norway anymore. Like you can shoot a moose, but you're not gonna have a whole moose to yourself. It's a whole different way of hunting.
How so? Why is that? What's different in Norway about that?
Well, for starters, like if you're gonna hunt a moose, you have to be in a team, and the team has to be of so many people, and you have to have a certified dog that can retrieve the moose if you lose it. And when you divide the meat, you usually pay the owner of the land per kilo of the meat. So it ends up like a bull moose usually ends up being like $25 to $3,000, which is not bad
Jeez.
divided by a lot of people, but still like here it's free, you know, you just pay for your hunting license. And then, you know, there's not a lot of species to hunt as it is in Alaska. If you want to go wild reindeer hunting, we don't have caribou. Then if you want to go to a certain area that is pretty good for hunting, you can end up paying $5,000 for a big reindeer bull.
That's that's wild.
Yeah,
That's
it is.
crazy that you can't just go hunting in Norway. You have to have a team. You have to have a dog. That's
Yeah,
crazy. That
it's completely
takes away
different.
your freedom.
Yeah, I feel like it does, but we don't have the same resources, and a lot of the land in Norway is also privately owned, even if it's
Mm.
mountainous areas or just the tundra, and so you kind of pay for the hunting ground, and that's what's expensive, and they are free range to put whatever price they want on it for the tag. So it's very different. Like here you go, you buy your hunting license, your fishing license, and then you have so many animals that you can shoot. You can't just go and shoot 4 moose. Obviously, you have to, you have one tag for one moose, but it is definitely more opportunities here. And yeah, this winter I'm trying to get into some wolf hunting and trapping, and like trapping in Norway is almost not a thing anymore either.
Wolf tracking.
Yeah, because I
That's got to be intense.
I like the wolves, man. I don't have any issues with wolves, but I do think there's a lot of them in certain areas, and I experienced that this winter with them coming for the dogs a couple times, and I've just decided that I don't think I'm gonna have bad conscience shooting wolves if I get the opportunity. I would use the fur. Obviously, I wouldn't eat the animal, but I would use the fur, and I just like to have the experience of it. I don't know how I'll react to it though, because they are quite similar to my dogs. It might feel wrong, but I also feel like I should give it a try.
Well, predator hunting is very different than, I guess you could say, like a moose is a predator, but it's not like a moose doesn't hunt humans, you know, or a moose doesn't hunt dogs.
No, right. And they normally don't wolves either, but they will shred a dog if it's in their territory and they feel like it. which I really thought that that's like an old school story, but I really got to experience that this winter. They will come for the dogs if they feel like they are on their territory and messing up their area. But they won't. They will never be a threat to humans, for wolves and stuff like that. But it's just the fact that I think people have something against that you shoot something you can't eat.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I lean on the side of like, if there's wolves and they're a potential threat, like, there's no harm in shooting them. Um, if you're gonna go out and you're gonna get a wolf, hey, you're gonna go out and you're gonna get a wolf. Have
Yeah.
you had any experience? I know there's a bear you were posting about that. There's kind of like a bear around. Do you have any experience with like with grizzly bears? Um,
Um, no, not really. Besides seeing few of them when I've been out, I've never been charged by a grizzly bear or had any scary accidents, and I am so happy about that because there was a story here just a few weeks ago. A father with his 9-year-old son, I think, was mauled by a grizzly. Um,
oof,
with severe damages, and I just like I read these stories, and I feel thankful that I haven't been in that situation yet, considering how much time I spend outside. But I do want to hunt for grizzly because they're actually pretty good eating if you prepare it right. But
really?
yeah, they are. And blackberry is phenomenal. Like this black bear that is
I've
around
had
this
black
neighborhood
bear.
right now, I would love to get a hold of him.
I've had black bear before. Me and my buddy went bow hunting and he got one. And I will say, cleaning one is a pain in the because they're like Jello. Like I was so surprised when I went to move it. I'm like, why is my hand like sinking into this? And they're like fucking Jello, but they taste very good. They're very tasty.
Yeah, did you get a spring bear or a fall bear?
Fall bear.
Yeah, those are the best ones when they're full of berries. They don't taste
Yep.
so, if you get them in the summer, they kind of like fishy and they're eating all this rotten meat and stuff. They're not so good, I think. But I'm not sure about grizzly, like if I would like it or not. But I think they're tasteful if you prepare them right. But I would also like to have a rug on my floor in the cabin. So it's kind of selfish in a way, I guess. But because you don't really see grizzlies attacking people that often. They're not really a threat as long as if you're alert to where you are and you just don't walk right into a fresh kill or something like that. Um, but it's definitely on my list to try to get a hold of a grizzly.
That's a fucking adventure. Going after a grizzly. Like,
It is. I tried to do it alone last spring. I was out with the rifle and I was hoping they would wake up and I could see if I could get a stalk on one of them. But yeah, no, it's super terrifying to be out there alone and trying to hunt for a grizzly. But I feel like for the most part they would run away from you. It's just that if you're gonna shoot one, you better know what you're doing so it doesn't come charging right at you.
yeah, I watched a video of a guy that shot a grizzly, but
Hmm.
he didn't place a shot right. And even if you do, those things aren't. You would have to get a perfect shot to drop one of those. Just drop it. And this grizzly, he got shot, and he just fucking turned and barreled towards this dude. And they're fucking quick. They're big. It was terrifying. That poor dude. He got mauled a little bit, but it ended up dying.
Yeah,
Ugh.
that's my biggest fear that something like that would happen or that a spring grizzly would come out and be super aggressive and hungry and maybe want to mess with the dogs or get annoyed by the dogs or even like a late hibernation grizzly that hasn't gone in yet, could do some damage because they're hungry and they're trying to eat everything they can right before they go into hibernation and I'm really happy that I haven't encountered that yet, and hopefully never will. But it's definitely a possibility. Yeah.
That'd be fucking badass. If you took down a grizzly though.
I would love to. I would just love to have a nice rug and not so much to say that I did it. I don't really care about like posing with a grizzly. That doesn't appeal to me. But I would just love to have the experience, of taking down a big predator and I'm gonna eat it too. So we'll see though how it works out. It's like I said, it's not something I'm super confident about yet. Black bear, I'm more confident around Grizzlies are just a little bit more. You don't really know what they're gonna do always, and they're so big.
Yeah, they're massive. They're intimidating. I mean, black bears. I mean, I've been around black bears. They're gonna run away from you. Um, they're smaller, but a grizzly bear. I saw one. Isabella and I went. My wife. We went to a zoo and we saw one, and I was like, "Fuck that!" Like it's in an enclosure, but fuck that. Being out, like thinking, being out in nature. I sometimes think I'm like, man, like there's just animals out here, and they're not just regular like, oh, like that's cute to see, like bears are cute, haha. There's fucking animals out there, and there's fun. This is nature. And having to remind myself if I was ever in a place where grizzlies existed, I'd be like, holy fuck, there is like a a massive fucking animal that could destroy me. Like I could have a rifle, I could shoot it, and it would still fuck me up if it wanted to.
It is,
Mm.
and the thing is, like, I feel like you kind of get used to the fact that you are in grizzly country. I used to be a lot more scared out when I was outside, wandering in the bush now than I am now. I feel like I'm kind of more used to it, but it's always that feeling of like, especially when you can smell that they're being close by or just been there. It's it's kind of a icky feeling, but I really got myself a reality check because I'm always like, oh, it's they're usually afraid of humans. They're not going to bother me or the dogs. But the reality check I had this spring with the 8 wolves that came for the dogs, and they were literally 20 feet from me. That was like insane. Like that's something you read in Jack London books. And they, in the middle of the night, they came for the dogs, and that was like this shit doesn't happen. They don't A whole wolf pack doesn't come to your camp where they know there's humans to come for the dogs. It just doesn't happen in 2022. But it did, and it was a reality check.
Well, nature still exists. I think people kind of forget that, like, while it is 2022, we think of, oh, it's 2022, modern society in 2022, and we forget that places where nature is still fucking nature exists. Alaska still exists. Antarctica, fucking polar bears still exist. Like those are still things where you can go out, it can be 2040 and you will get fucked if you're not prepared. Um, One thing I wanted to ask you as well, do you ever think to yourself, because whenever I'm in the woods kind of around where I am, it's pretty well traveled. People have been there before. Do you ever think to yourself, like, you're in a place where there haven't really been humans, like if you're out traveling, you ever think like, when's the last time humans were here, like in this spot that I am?
I To be honest with you, I don't really think that way because I have a massive respect for natives and how they used to
Mm.
travel and roam the land. I'm pretty sure that everywhere I've been, there's been natives before me and probably a lot of white people too. I just I think it's naive to think that there's corners of the world where there hasn't been people yet because most likely some native establishment has been around.
Yes, that is very, very, very true.
I don't, when some people kind of have a tendency to brag about like, I'm the first one to do this or that and cross this island or cross this river or doing whatever. They're like promoting themselves doing something as the first person in the world or the first person of that nation or whatever. I'm just kind of like, that's like giving discredibility to the natives that used to live off the land
Yeah.
and spend all their life in this area. It's just kind of crazy to me how removed we are from what used to be. And I have great respect for natives. I have a lot of native friends, and they're trying to take back the way that they used to live. And I have full respect for that because it is the knowledge they have about nature and animals and weather and all the systems and how it works is profound. I've learned so much from natives, even back in Norway as well, like how they can tell by just looking at the moon, they can tell the weather tomorrow is going to be like this.
Yeah, we have a lot of where I grew up. There's a lot of Native American culture. There's a lot of Native American significant landmarks and preserved land, and I find myself thinking whenever I was traveling or hunting, or I would sit on the side of like a river or something, I would always think, I'm like, in this exact spot, like 500 years ago, what was different about this place? And it's just an intriguing thing that I try and do more often, just for myself. It's just a fun thing that I do. Or I'd be like 5,000 years ago, where I'm sitting right now. What was it like? And
Right.
it's
I mean,
it it
sometimes you
it
come
tends.
across old establishments, where there's been an old hunting camp, or it could be 100 years old because you can kind of tell by the way the wood was cut, or you see tree stumps and signs of previous camping life or life in general. And it's rare to come across those sites nowadays, but I've seen a few of them, and it is kind of fascinating to think about what were they doing here 100 years ago. But I do think that for the most part, people nowadays people go pretty much can go anywhere with their airplanes.
Yeah, not really Antarctica. I know that's still what they say is unexplored. Oh, my
Yeah.
dog's getting a little restless.
Well, for sure there's
um,
areas of the world that aren't that much explored, but I feel like Alaska, it's pretty well used by the natives all over, and white people
yeah,
too now, for flying in for hunting and stuff. It's like we're everywhere.
yeah, and from my understanding too, that's kind of how people came to North America back when the land bridge existed between kind of where Russia's at and Alaska. Um, like way back in the day, from my
Yeah.
understanding, that's how humans, made their way into North America. Um,
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I mean, I admire so much back in the days how hardy people were, like what they could endure, what they considered hard is like what a lot of people nowadays, including myself, would probably consider impossible. Like just the way that you had to survive. I love reading old trapper books and native books, from all over the world about their life back then, and I collect antique books like that, and it's just like it's wild what they considered hard nowadays. We wouldn't even think about it being a scenario.
yeah, I think it's a very good reminder that nature still exists. It doesn't. It's not like it used to be because we have largely, revolutionized the way that people live, um, building city structure, society as a whole. But I think you are a very good example on how you are going about life and how you are currently living in Alaska, where I feel it's very connected, and it's a good reminder for folks that nature still exists. It can still absolutely fuck you up if you're not prepared, and it's good to connect with it, though. You shouldn't be too afraid.
No.
Be cautious, be wary, but
Yeah,
don't be
be
afraid.
cautious and be alert, and most of the time you'll be fine. And check the river ice before you cross. That's my number one. And yeah, just stay connected and stay alert, and usually it's all good. And if you don't let your ego drive you too far, because that usually up in trouble.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with me. I know you're very busy, um, so I appreciate you blocking off this time to come chat with me. It was very insightful. I've been so excited to talk to you, and it was great. It was very enjoyable.
No, thank you for having me. This fun and being on a American podcast. I haven't been on too many, and it's cool that somebody else takes interest in this life for sure.
How many podcasts have you been on in America?
I done one. I think I done one before. Yeah, so this is my second one in the US, which is it's cool. It's a little challenging sometimes to explain everything in English, but it's okay.
I think you did great. You spoke very well. We've had foreigners on. I say foreigners. We've had people on before who English isn't their first language, and I understand it's very difficult. When I went to Europe and I lived in Italy, and I was trying to be, I wanted to learn Italian. I didn't want to go to Italy and be like, "Do you speak English?" I wanted to speak Italian. I wanted to, be courtesy of the local people and the cultures. And I remember how difficult it was for me I had to pause all the time. Anytime I was ordering food, I'd have to sit there and think. And they're like, "I speak English," and I'm like, "I don't want to do that. I want to speak Italian to you guys." But you crush it. I think you fucking crush it.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I feel like my English has gotten a lot better since I moved, obviously, but I just sometimes it's hard to find the right words, and my vocabulary is a little short. Somebody told me like you need to up your vocabulary a little bit, and I'd love to have more adjectives and words to use. But for now, I think it's everybody can understand what I'm saying. I wanted to ask you, do you think of what do you think of this episode in terms of like what are we gonna or what are you gonna call it in terms of the content? I think we talked about so much weird stuff.
That's a really good question. Our producer usually comes up with the titles and he writes a description. I don't know. What do you think it should be?
I have no idea. I wanted to know if you thought we got did you think that we got some good conversations out of it? Like in terms of your other podcasts that you usually have? I haven't listened to them unfortunately, but yeah.
Oh, this has been great. This has been great. My producer is gonna love this episode. He loves talking about psychedelics. He loves nature too. He's a huge. He lives out in Arizona, and he loves going out. He's in the woods every week, camping or just going out with friends or just connecting with nature. He's big on that. So he's gonna love editing and producing this.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad because I felt like maybe it's too woo woo for your listeners, but
No,
maybe it can give a different perspective on things.
no. For the people that are listening to this right now, they know that I don't give a fuck about what they enjoy. I like people, and um, I think they enjoy that. That's no offense to them. Like I care a lot about them, obviously, because without them, this doesn't exist. But we'd no, even when we started the show, one of the things that we were very adamant on was we're not going to have people on just because like it's a name or just because it's going to get a lot of listens or just because you know they're a person that's going to get us follows or whatever. We have people on because we like them, because we like their content, or we're just really interested in them. um, and whether that's somebody with 1 million followers, 10 followers, whether somebody, like I said in the beginning, the disclosure that we give all of our guests, if there's ever anything that you're uncomfortable talking with, we take it out. Even if it's going to be like the juiciest sound bit that we could ever use, like we don't care. We'll take that out.
Yeah. No, I like that.
It-
I'm comfortable with everything that was said, even the little bit of woo woo stuff. I think it's whatever. I need to start getting used to talking about it, so it's all good.
yeah, and that's kind of our approach to the show, where it's very genuine. We don't really, you know, I think the listeners appreciate and enjoy that we appreciate and enjoy our guests more than us trying to do something to impress them. And I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It was great insight getting to know you. I finally got to talk with you. That's been super exciting for me. I was telling my wife for like weeks. I'm like, fuck yeah. Because when I originally reached out, I didn't think you were going to answer. Um,
Oh, yeah, you
I,
got I'm so bad at checking my DMs, so I'm glad I caught you when you texted me again.
yeah, I know I try not to be too persistent with some people because I don't want to come off like I'm trying to fucking like bother or annoy them. But I'm like, she's in Alaska doing Alaskan shit. Like, I guarantee she isn't like up to date with her DMs because we barely are up to date with our DMs and we're not doing the same shit you are. So I'm like, I'll I'll take another chance. I don't want to sound like I'm coming off as annoying, but I do want to have her on.
No, that's
Glad I
great.
did because
I enjoyed it too. This was awesome. It's yeah, like I said, it's cool to try to do something outside your own country and
yeah, if you want to close us out real quick, give us some. It's normally dad advice, so this would be mom advice, and that's not like if you have kids or not. It's like you're our mom. What's some advice you have for everybody?
Oh, you're asking me right now for the recording?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay, let me think a second. You want me to give a mom advice?
It doesn't have to be for like mom as a kid. It's kind of like a joke, like like
Hmm.
everybody calls like us dad. Um, so we're like, oh, dad advice. Even if you don't have kids, like it doesn't have to be kid related. It can be a good person, or it could be I don't know. I feel like
Mm,
you have some unique life experiences.
okay. My mom advice would be to be considerate of your surroundings, including the people and the animals. and then let things be the way they are, and don't. No, wait, that's not. Nope. No, scratch. I need to do it over. Oh shit, that's like a rough question to get right off the bat.
Yep. Yes, it is. We put people on the spot. Our producer will clean it up if he feels like he needs to edit it out.
No, I'll get one. Just give me 1 sec. I need to think. My mom advice is to be more considerate about your surroundings, even if it's people or animals, and be more aware of yourself as well.
Hell yeah. Good mom advice. Thank you for coming on. Thanks for everybody listening. Goodbye.